welcome to the Ashland Planning Board meeting of Thursday, September 12th. It is about 7:17 p.m. in the Selectmen's meeting room in Town Hall. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on WACA cable television, and we thank them for that. On our agenda tonight, our first item is a public hearing on a scenic road permit for Eversource as part of the pipeline project that's proposed through town. This is because their preferred route goes through two scenic roads and would need some alteration of rock walls along those scenic roads. Correct. The second item on our agenda is a public hearing. It's listed as 310, 320 Pond Street. Pretty much everyone is familiar with the old Blockbuster video building in front of the old Sears Plaza where the Habitat for Humanity Restore is. There is a proposed restaurant, and this will be our first night of the public hearing on that. And following that, we have a discussion on the color scheme for 128 Main. And then we have a meeting with a group of residents for, they call themselves the Lower 126 Group, and they're going to be talking to us about the proposed development at the old Fusion site at 12 Pond Street, also known as also the old Marconi site, depending on how long you've been in town. So there's also some other discussions, possible zoning change and reports and minutes and stuff like that. With that said, we will start with the public hearing on the scenic roads permit. This is a continuation from July 25th when they were last here. And so I'm now calling the public hearing back into order. And the notice I will read again briefly. The Ashland Planning Board will conduct a public hearing to hear the petition of NSTAR Gas, doing business as Eversource Energy, for approval of a scenic roads application for the Eversource Energy Hopkinton to Ashland transfer line project in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 15C of the Massachusetts General Laws and Chapter 249, Section 20 of the Town of Ashland Code. The project will replace approximately 3.71 miles of existing 6-inch diameter steel natural gas pipeline with 12-inch diameter steel natural gas pipe. The project consists of temporary disturbance within the existing pipeline easement at two designated scenic roads, Chestnut Street and Cedar Street, consisting of in-street construction and temporary removal and reassembly of existing stone walls, but no disturbance to nearby trees along the two scenic roads. So with that introduction, is there somebody from Eversource here tonight? And just for everyone's knowledge, we do need everybody who's speaking to come to the podium. That way the microphones pick you up for people who are watching at home.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, board members. Thank you for having us before you tonight. I don't really have much to say. We don't have any additional information to provide, but I know last time, at the last meeting, we had continued for purposes of the board and staff to conduct a site visit. So I guess my question would just be to the board, did you have any questions from your site visit that you had conducted?
We're also, you also were in front of the Conservation Commission, and the
Yes.
thought is maybe you would have made progress in that at the same time, because that could potentially render this moot if things change there or something. We're kind of hoping that
Sure.
there would be.
So we are still meeting before the Conservation Commission. We did have a meeting on it was August 26th, and we had a meeting the very next day just to discuss technical matters with the agent and the third-party reviewer. And we are in the process of answering questions that came out of that meeting, and the conservation agent actually still needs to get us a full list of questions that came from that meeting. We're still awaiting that from the conservation agent. and from the third-party reviewers. So once we receive those questions, we would answer them in a timely manner, but we have not, the set we have now is incomplete.
All right. Are there any comments or questions from the board at this time?
So apparently the town is awaiting a decision on the declaratory judgment being sought by town council and land court. Is there an update on where that discussion stands?
Town planner Peter Matchak. At this point, I would say that's no. I think everyone is still waiting, including town council and the board of selectmen, for that declaratory judgment.
Okay. And what's the rough idea of timeline on that?
It could come out. I don't know. I would. It's outside of my knowledge.
Gotcha.
I don't want to speak. I don't want to spread a rumor or
Understood.
Yeah. But it is in land court, and everyone is awaiting declaratory judgment.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we didn't talk about planning a formal group site visit to those two locations.
No,
We
no,
noted the locations.
We noted the locations, and everybody
And-
was gonna drive by
Yeah,
and take a look at them. I've driven by
I have too.
a couple times. Nothing has changed. The sites are marked with natural gas, the yellow 4-foot tall natural gas pipes. And so those are on those sites, so they're fairly easy to distinguish. But no, there was no planning board site visit ever planned. It was just the planning board members were going to visit the sites on their own. But at this point, to reiterate, the Board of Selectmen through Town Council is awaiting the declaratory judgment concerning the easement and the language of the easement in land court. The Conservation Commission still has an open case. It has not had a ruling. And in my eyes, it's appropriate for at least, the Conservation Commission to decide or make a ruling, prior to the planning board. And so that's where I kind of am right now on this project.
Yeah, I think that's where we were last time, and it's reflected in the minutes for that meeting, that the appropriate order seems to be to, in the ranking of these big decisions and little decisions, is to get the judgment or the ruling, what happens in the Conservation Commission, and then for that to come here to discuss these minor points. Just seems kind of a strange order to go in for us to take care of these little things without knowing what the big picture is.
Sure. No, understood, and I think the company doesn't object to waiting for the Conservation Commission. I mean, we've been meeting with them since December, and we understand that it would be an awkward position for this board to be in to issue before that process is concluded. I think we understand that, and we want to make sure you feel comfortable, making your decision. The one thing I will say for the record, the only thing the company is opposed to is waiting for the declaratory judgment process to finish, because I'm not a lawyer, but from my understanding, that process is incredibly lengthy. Land court process that can take upwards of 2 or 3 years. And we have a schedule that we have to keep, and the declaratory judgment, my understanding, is filed for the 2 parcels that the town owns currently, of which do not have any scenic roads on them. So, I mean, the company's of the belief that it doesn't really have a bearing on the scenic road permit. And the question of the declaratory judgment, I believe, is whether or not we have rights to abandon a facility in the ground. And if we didn't, we would just have to remove the facility, so it wouldn't obviate our ability to do the project. So, I mean, I think we certainly are comfortable waiting for the Conservation Commission to make their decision, but, the declaratory judgment is something that we feel, although it's important to the town, doesn't really have a bearing on us to obtain permits locally. And say if something did come out of the declaratory judgment that required us to, that wasn't consistent with the permit you had issued years from now, we would just have to file a new permit application with you, and we would have to withdraw our other one. And in the event nothing changes, then, having waited that long for the declaratory judgment to be issued would have been pointless. So,
Is that,
Well said. I agree with everything. The declaratory judgment is concerning the easement and the number of pipes. In my estimation, that's what the declared judgment is, all concerning is there's existing pipe, there'll be a new pipe. Can there be a second pipe left, which will be terminated in that easement? That's to my knowledge. So however, therefore, however, the Conservation Commission has not ruled yet. So I think we could get to that bridge. When we get to that bridge, I think we need to cross it. But I don't believe we're at that point, or at the bridge yet to decide if we want to cross, because the Conservation Commission has not made its ruling. So I think we can wait until that point. So I think it's a good idea for the applicant to request a continuance, like we did at the last public meeting. I would say at least another month until the Conservation Commission has a chance, or at least one or two more chances to decide and make a ruling. And if they fail to, I think within the meantime, I will talk to town council and I will get a legal opinion on how the planning board shall proceed. And I think that's a good, I would say, avenue forward concerning this application.
Does that sound?
That sounds fair to me. I think, just so the board's aware, I think we are getting there with the Conservation Commission. I mean, they've gathered a lot of information over the past year. We've had, I think, attended 10 or 11 meetings, taken feedback from the public, attended some technical review meetings with their third-party reviewers. So I think we're getting there, and hopefully we will be closing soon. So I don't think it's going to be something that's going to wait several more months. I'm hoping maybe in the next meeting, as soon as that, we would be ready.
Well, we do appreciate you coming in, especially
Sure.
it seems that it probably was a little bit more of a challenge this time.
With my, yeah. I gotta get out some and do something. They want me to use it. But the other reason we came tonight was just to get any remaining questions you may have had specific to the permit. I'm not sure if there was any further questions on the scenic roads or stone walls, because we want to make the most of the meeting, so.
I think other than just us going out and looking individually at it, I think that was all there was
Okay,
on that.
thank you.
Yeah, that was fairly clear last time.
Yeah.
Great.
It was.
Yeah.
All right.
Before we continue this is a public hearing, and I would like to open it up for any residents or other people who would like to speak on the matter, if they have
Thank you.
anything they'd like to share with us.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening.
Evening.
Mark Sony, 49 Hawthorne Road, Ashland, Mass. I only have one question because I'm satisfied with the progress. That's what's going on with this so far. I've been asking this one question. I asked the question the last time, and I ask it again, because I haven't got an answer yet. Through the chairman to the Eversource rep, I do know that they made up a right-of-way contract with Hopkinton. Did Ashland get one?
I don't know if that's really,
The answer's gotta be made to make the progress they want to officially dig through. Did it happen?
I don't even know what a right-of-way contract is.
The conservation agent has it, and the town manager has it for Hopkinton. And they say they're gonna incorporate it. Did they get in touch? I need an answer for that. That's the town's gotta wanna know about that before they actually dig the first spot.
Peter, can you check on that for next time?
Mark, Peter Matchik, Town Planner, Mr. Dusoni. I am not aware of a contract being executed by the town of Hopkinton for this project. However, I can speak with the town manager, representing the Board of Selectmen, to see if one has been obtained by the town of Hopkinton. But not to my knowledge. This is the first time I'm hearing about that item.
And to answer that,
So if you find out that one is needed, you could also let us know about that as well.
100%, yep.
Yeah.
I went to the Hopkinton Planning Board, and they made me a copy of it. I brought it here and gave it to them.
Thank you, Mr. Dusoni.
Hi, Diane Ring, 42 Bay Colony. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for accepting this comment. I really appreciate the willingness of Eversource to cede to Ms. Kendall and Mr. Matchak's suggestion that this hearing be continued. The only point that I would like to make is that, to respectfully disagree with Mr. Waldrop, that I do think that the declaratory judgment does have a bearing on this particular in-street construction. That's my best guess. And I also object to Eversource's, what Mr. Waldrop said about Eversource not wanting to wait for the declaratory judgment because it could take up until, a couple of years. When Michael Herbert addressed the Conservation Commission meeting recently, maybe Select Board, he had said he thought it might be 3 or 4 weeks, and I understand that Mr. Matchak will check with Town Council to see how it's looking, and I really appreciate that, because without that information, it's an incomplete data set. So thank you very much for considering that to be an important part of the process, as well as Concom. Thank you.
And just to clarify, you will check with Town Council as to whether or not our council thinks it's appropriate to wait on the declaratory judgment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That said, I believe it's time to continue this. If we go 1 month, that would be October 10th or October 24th.
Do you know, excuse me, Peter Matchak, Town Planner, when are your next hearing dates with the Ashland Conservation Commission?
I believe we are on schedule to meet with them on the 23rd, correct? 23rd, that's a Monday.
Of September?
Yes. And Ms. Dos Anjos, the conservation agent, is currently out on vacation, I believe, so we may or may not receive the information we need for that meeting. So the plan is to attend that meeting, but if we did need to request a continuance, we would send an email to the necessary parties beforehand. But the plan is the 23rd.
Would it be all right to go to October 24th for the planning board, or is that, or would you rather go to October 10th?
Our preference would be the 10th, just with the understanding that we could always continue after. We'd like to keep things moving if we could.
Okay.
That would be our preference.
Do you know if we currently have anything on our schedule for that date?
Nope.
Okay. So should we go for, is 7:15 a reasonable time, or do you need to, for your transportation getting out here, is later time better?
No, I think the 7:15 should work.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I will entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to 7:15 on October 10th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 4-0.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will just note for the record, we had several letters from residents that were provided to us, and I'm sure that if you weren't given a copy, that you can be given a copy.
Yes, we'd like copies if possible.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item is the Blockbuster. So I will read the notice for this. The Ashland Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, September 12th, 2019 at 7:15 p.m. in the Board of Selectmen Meeting Room, 2nd floor, Ashland Town Hall, 101 Main Street, Ashland, Massachusetts, to hear the petition of Baypath Plaza LLC, care of Bowler Engineering, John Kuschik, 352 Turnpike Road, Southborough, Massachusetts, 01772, requesting design plan review and site plan review per Chapter 48, Section 6 of the Massachusetts Zoning Act, and Chapter 282, Sections 9.6 design plan review and 9.4 site plan review of the Ashland bylaws. The applicant is proposing the renovation of the building located at 310 and 320 Pond Street, which was formerly used as a Blockbuster video. The building will be converted to a 145-seat, 120 interior seats, 25 exterior seats restaurant. The property in question is located at 310 and 320 Pond Street, Assessor's Map 26, lots 209 and 210 in the Highway Commerce Zoning District, and Pond Street Mixed Use Overlay District. parties wishing to be heard on this matter should submit written comments to the planning board ahead of time or appear at the time and place indicated above. Materials may be viewed at Town Hall during normal business hours or on the Ashland Town website. So, that said, this hearing's called to order, and I will have the applicant introduce himself and present the application.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name's Nathan Mahonen with Bowler Engineering, here tonight with the potential future owners of the proposed restaurant to discuss the site plan review application as submitted. As you noted, I believe most members of the board are familiar with the site, but for reference for everybody here today, it's located at 320 Pond Street, which is the former Blockbuster Video building. It's located within the existing commercial plaza that's at the corner of Pond Street and Spyglass Hill Drive. The site is currently developed with 2 existing single-story commercial buildings, the Blockbuster Video and the other building, which includes the most recent child care facility that went into effect this year, as well as the Habitat for Humanity restore. It's built out with paved parking areas, landscaping, and associated utility infrastructure for the majority of the lot. The proposed project is to renovate both the interior and exterior of the building, which was formerly used as the Blockbuster Video. The new 39,000 square foot lot will be created for the building, as well as the associated parking and other amenities to be transferred from the current owner to the applicant. As noted in the application, the restaurant submitted was for 145 seats, 120 interior, 25 exterior. As is our meeting with the tech review the other day, I've actually been informed by the applicant they're going to reduce the number of seating. The interior seats will be reduced to 99 seats, and the exterior seating will remain the same as submitted in the application. As part of the building renovations, a new cooler will be added at the back of the building to service the new use. The existing parking will essentially remain the same, with a couple minor modifications to service the new use. One being the removal of a couple spaces for the outdoor seating, which is at the front of the building, as well as the addition of 12 parking spaces on the southerly side of the building. The building will be continued to be serviced by the existing utilities that are on site today. All the utility service connections connect into existing infrastructure that's within the existing plaza. One minor change to that is there will be a grease trap added to the building to service the new restaurant use that will connect into the existing sanitary sewer system that runs through the plaza. Loading for the site will be done through the existing loading door at the rear of the building. We do show a loading area on the plan. There will be some minor modifications to that based upon discussions with the future owner, as well as some comments that were received from GCG, which is the peer reviewer. So those will be reflected on a subsequent plan set that will be submitted to the board, but the operation will be similar to the previous use that was there, where the loading will be at the rear of the building. Landscaping, there was a landscaping plan submitted with the application, bringing the new lot into conformance with the zoning bylaws for the proposed use. There will be a new freestanding sign at the front of the site there. The sign will be in conformance with the bylaws for setback, size, etc. There's no waivers or variances anticipated with the signage. And then with respect to lighting, there are 2 existing light poles near Pond Street. Those will be have their existing fixture heads removed and refitted with new LED fixtures. And 2 new light poles will be added behind the new parking area that I had mentioned previously to light up those spaces, as well as the drive aisle in front of them. I'm going to bring this up tonight because it was in the GCG comment letter. There is a minor amount of spillage, light spillage, over the proposed property line. However, that spillage is into Pond Street and into the remaining adjacent commercial plaza. The majority of it is less than 1 foot candle, so we don't expect it to have any sort of negative impact on the adjacent area. Wanted to bring it up as the peer reviewer had mentioned it, and they did leave it at the discretion of the board as whether they were okay with that. Relative to access, the 2 existing curb cuts, the one on Pond Street and Spyglass Hill, will remain as they are. There's no proposed modifications, nor are there any new curb cuts proposed as part of the project. And then just by way of a quick permitting and review update as to where we are in the project and in general. We did have our tech review meeting with town staff on Tuesday. There were some minor comments, mostly related to the interior of the building, making sure that the renovations are up to fire code and things of that nature that can be addressed on the revised plans, as I noted, or will be addressed as part of the building plans that are submitted to the town as part of the building permit application. We did have DRB scheduled for last evening, but however, unfortunately, there weren't enough members for quorum, so they did continue that meeting out until the 24th of this month, so a couple weeks out from now. As I did mention, we did get peer review comments from GCG. We will be providing a formal response and any necessary plan revisions to address those comments, most likely within the next week. I would anticipate that we'd be coming back to the board in a relatively timely manner. And as I mentioned before, there will be an A&R application in the future for the creation of the new lot. However, we're waiting until we get through a little bit of the process before they kind of formalize that and set the lines and have it submitted to the board for their review and approval. So that's the project as proposed. We're happy to answer any questions that the board or any of the surrounding neighbors may have. And thank you for your time.
Does that plan include, is there any changes that come when they do the 126 modifications through there? There's gonna be, does that include that, or is that just?
So the 126 modifications have a minor impact on the proposed lot. There's a slight taking of a couple hundred square feet at the corner here. When you take that taking into account, the proposed lot after the taking would still be in conformance with zoning. So that's shown on the detailed plans as submitted to the board. It's not reflected on this rendering because it's not in place yet, but that was accounted for in the design.
That will certainly be a factor in traffic analysis, because I believe the entrance at Spyglass Hill is going to be significantly changed.
Correct.
So that's something we're going to have to take into account for traffic. How many parking spaces total are there in the plan?
So existing in the area are 34. We're adding an additional 8 for a total of 42. Required under zoning based upon the number of seats as submitted was 37. With the seats being reduced, that required count will go down a couple spaces.
Okay, so that's I'm thinking if there's 4 people to a table,
Mm-hmm.
the math works out about right.
So the current math would not need any sort of waiver for the parking. The parking provided to be sufficient for the seats in the restaurant?
Correct.
Okay.
On the lot itself, the lot is within an existing commercial plaza, and I believe the current owner of that lot will provide easements with an agreement that if parking was needed, then parking would take place upon that, and within that, I would say, commercial development, strip mall. But for the most part, the bottom line is the parking that is required via the number of seats are provided on the future lot, which would be created via A&R, so the applicant could therefore purchase the lot via title from the current owner.
And I believe that you need to verify that creating this as a separate lot doesn't take away parking from the overall site, pulling something from the rest of the site out of compliance.
Correct. We did include a parking analysis as part of the submittal for the rest of the plaza, including the spaces that are dedicated for this use, the spaces that are dedicated for the child care facility, and the remaining restore. GCG has asked us to clarify some of those calculations, which we'll certainly provide, but there is sufficient parking on the remaining center to accommodate the remaining 2 uses.
One complaint I've heard from the residents up at Spyglass Hill in the past has been noise from dumpster pickups. Where is the dumpster located, and what can we do to ensure that the dumpsters won't be collected in the middle of the night?
So the new dumpster location is off the southwest corner of the existing building, so there's access from the main drive aisle for it. It is surrounded by a white PVC vinyl fence and associated landscaping to block and screen the view. Relative to noise, that did come up as the part of the tech review meeting. Our understanding is that the earliest pickup in the morning allowed by town code is 7 o'clock. The applicant will adhere to that, but I believe their existing provider that they use at some of their other locations is somewhere after 8 a.m. in the morning.
One thing we might want is a sign on the gate to the dumpster that specifies the hours that no dumpster pickups allowed between whatever the time at night is till 7 a.m.
The allowable hours.
Yeah, so it just
Yep.
something like that, because we've had problems with this at other sites, and I don't want this to become a problem here.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable request, and that's something we could easily incorporate into the revised plans.
And I assume the lids would not be metal; they would be some kind of rubber, plasticky type.
Typically,
lids,
they're a plastic type of lid.
so
I
that
just don't think there's
when
anything
employees
else.
are dumping food
Yeah,
in,
you don't get
and-
the banging from when
Yeah.
it's opening during the daytime.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So the white area to the left of the left colored in portion of that map, that land is not, that white section between Spyglass Hill and the color line there. That land is not part of what the applicant would own?
Correct.
Okay, whose land is that, just part of
That's
it?
part of the remaining center.
Okay, got it.
It just for reference to it includes lawn and landscape at this point in
Yeah,
time. So
no, okay. So, and then from a wintertime snow storage, perspective, what are the thoughts there?
So for snow storage, there is this remaining area here. The applicant and the owner can talk about easements relative to storage of snow, because that would technically cross over the property line between the two.
Yeah,
We are also in discussions with Parsons about what they do relative to snow storage and removal for the rest of the site, to see if there's any other dedicated areas that we could also use as part of the process and the new development.
So you increasing the impervious surface with the new parking spots?
By about 1,500 square feet.
Okay, and what are you doing for drainage?
So the drainage patterns and areas mimic what's out there today. We drain to an existing catch basin at the corner of the parking and to an existing catch basin over here. So we were anticipating very minimal impact to the stormwater system, which drains to a basin that's actually just off-site of the existing plaza. GCG has asked us to do a couple of additional improvements as part of their letter. We will be getting with them to discuss those comments and see what other improvements we can incorporate into the site. They were minor. They were looking for some upgrades to the existing catch basins to make sure that they're up to code and things of that nature. But we'll get with them and make sure that we're addressing their comments relative to the stormwater.
Okay.
So does that basically mean that the stormwater for the site is addressed on the site, or the stormwater is addressed on the commercial site as a whole?
So the whole system's interconnected for the
Mhm.
entire plaza.
Mhm.
Everything comes through various trunk lines and comes to an existing detention pond that's just off the corner of the site to the north of the shopping center.
But it's held, that's on the shopping center property?
Correct, it would be on the shopping center plus, yes. When it was developed as a whole parcel, whole stormwater collection system. And so,
To maintain the stormwater on the site versus letting it?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so they would,
So you're saying that the drainage system for the site as a whole when the whole site was originally developed, had enough surplus capacity for the added impervious space?
So it's a minor increase. It's 1,500 square
Yeah.
feet relative to the entire size of the property, which is just over 5 acres. We weren't anticipating an impact on the system. Again, we'll address the increase in impervious and water quality questions that came up as part of GCG's review to make sure that they're comfortable with what we're proposing.
I know with the MS4 permits and stuff, the town is a lot more sensitive to this than it may have been a few years ago,
Mhm.
or certainly when this whole site as a whole was developed. So we will want to look at that carefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there gonna be some kind of agreement or something, who's responsible for maintaining all that?
So there's, it's under one ownership right now. I'm certain that there will be easements between the new owner and the current owner of the shopping center to make sure that utilities, stormwater, access, things of that nature are appropriately divided between the two parties.
I think the town would probably want copies of those easements as a condition for approval. I think that's typical for projects like this.
So there's something on record with the
Yeah,
town.
so,
Yeah.
you know, we know that you actually do have permission to tell your customers to drive through some other private access.
Absolutely.
Is Spyglass Hill Road a private road, or is that public?
No, it's public. It's owned by the town. It is public, yeah.
I understand that, design review didn't have quorum last night, so you guys weren't able to chat with them, but you did provide this, rendering to us.
Correct.
And so currently, that building is a flat roof building, no eaves. Is this what you're thinking, and is this the direction you guys are thinking of going with this?
You want to speak to that?
Was it better, a little better?
Yeah, I mean,
Good evening. I'm Georgios Vasilakis, one of the future owners of the building. It's the first thought that we had for the eaves, but we're not 100% sure yet.
Okay.
So we have to go through that, plus with the design review board, get a couple extra ideas, and then finalize it.
Okay.
And while you're up, a lot of people are curious of what we would expect this restaurant to be. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have a bearing on the permit, but a lot of people are curious, you know, is this, what kind of food you're gonna serve, what's your
It's
vision?
gonna be a typical American food.
Hmm?
It's not gonna be a pizza place. A lot of people thought that is a pizza place. It's not gonna be a pizza place.
Okay.
So it'll be a little bit upscale food.
For whatever it's worth, I think this is more interesting than a flat roof Blockbuster building, so.
Definitely is.
Yeah.
All right, if we're ready, I'll open it up for public comment.
Just in the
Oh.
vein of what you said about the trash pickup, so what's the delivery schedule gonna look like? And particularly in the morning when you have drop-off at the daycare center?
Food deliveries or the trash pickups?
No, for deliveries, you covered the trash pickups, but like supply deliveries, like what are the intervals, what's the schedule?
Usually they between 7 and 10 a.m. But this is something that we can negotiate with them and tell them what time we need them to be there. So we need to know if it's a lot of traffic with the daycare in the morning. Obviously, we don't want them to be there, so we can have them come in the afternoon when it's quiet time.
What type of vehicles would that involve?
They're box trucks.
You ready for public comment? All right. If any members of the public would like to comment on this, we won't be voting on this tonight, and we will have to be looking extensively at the traffic, but we'd love to hear your comments. Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and say what you want to say.
Thank you. I'm Ann Manning. I live on 74 East Bluff Road, and I've been to different board meetings here before because I live very close to Sears, where Sears had been. And for a few years, I was woken up all the time with dumpster noise. It was to the point I couldn't sleep at night. At this point, they've been great. Restore's been great. But what happens too is we have a lot of illegal dumping. So in the middle of the night, you'll hear the banging and then the slamming of things down. And it would be nice if we could have like locked off areas or something, because that definitely still wakes people up. I can really say when you live near that border, it's tough. So my question's mainly, and I would love to have something there, by the way, but I wanted to know some of the things you've already addressed. I'd like to know how the hours of the restaurant, how long, what kind of permit they'll have on hours.
If the applicant would like to answer that, that would be nice.
It should be 10 a.m. to 11 p.m.
10 a.m. to 11 p.m. if people didn't hear at home.
Okay, and you already answered about food. And then safeguarding the dumpster area, will you be applying for an entertainment license?
Yes.
They said yes to an entertainment license.
Mostly we do just acoustics once a week. So it's going to be 1 or 2 guys inside, never outside.
Okay, you said mainly. I guess I'm looking to you. It's so hard to do things after the fact, and I know what has happened to Metropolitan and Honto and all. And so I would really love for it to be clear what kind of restrictions there might be for 300 or so condos right there, because those are our homes, and I really don't want to have to listen to music all night. So that is another concern for me. Just about parking, just so you do know, when people leave and go onto Spyglass Hill Road, and this isn't your issue, but there's no stop sign there anymore. So people tend to pull out and sometimes pull right into Spyglass as you're coming down the hill from your home. And I hope that they'll replace that so that we don't have that.
Is that excuse me, Peter Matchett, Town Planner, is that a stop sign that's within the plaza going?
I believe it is, I don't know. It's
Okay.
right when you come onto Spyglass Hill from the plaza and you take a right to go out onto Pond Street.
Okay.
All
I
right?
can look into that
Okay.
from the town's perspective, and if it is a town and/or, I'm sorry, I've lost the words. If it's the town's responsibility, if the plaza's responsibility, if it's the plaza's, we can reach out to the current owner.
Okay, thank you.
And the traffic there is certainly of concern and relevant, so if it's the plaza's owner, getting that sign replaced could reasonably be a condition for the approval.
Okay, and also from Pond Street, many people now have been taking lefts into those buildings. They're supposed to go to Spyglass and then in, but instead they're taking a left into right around where the Habitat place is. It says no left turn right there, but they do. So that's another, not you, it's them. And then my biggest question too is, what percentage of the indoor seating is bar seating? 35%. Okay. So you said it's mainly, you didn't really answer to what kind of restaurant, like what?
Usually it's acoustics.
Okay.
There's no bands, no rock and roll bands or something loud. It'll be music, so you can still sit right next to them and you have a conversation. And usually we do that once a week,
Okay,
Saturday night.
all right,
So I personally guarantee you that you will never hear noise at all.
okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Good evening. Thank you, members of the board, for entertaining public comments on the record on this proposed project. I'm here representing sort of two interests. My name is Bruce Hardy, and I reside at 73 East Bluff Road, so I am a neighbor of the prior presenter. I am also the sitting board chair for the Spyglass Hill Condominium Association, so I am here to communicate and voice issues and concerns in a couple of key areas. Some have been introduced and covered with respect to noise abatement. Obviously, as an abutter with 324 families residing in close proximity to the plaza, the adherence to noise abatement protocol is imperative. So you've already been introduced to that topic already. You also intimated that certainly a traffic flow study was important, and as you may recall, when you considered the Dunkin' Donuts project years past, we stood and voiced those very concerns about excessive traffic along Spyglass Hill Road, which is our only entry and exit. And if I were to conservatively estimate, it has to service more than 1,000 vehicles each day coming and going past an existing town-controlled curb cut. Our concern is through the introduction of commerce and business there, that curb cut, both today and probably in context with the proposed roundabout construction, will create really a vehicular nightmare at the base of the hill. And while we recognize that we've got sort of two jurisdictions here, the Spyglass Hill Road is a town road, and therefore you control that curb cut. However, Route 126 is a state road, so they control curb cuts there. Certainly we would favor any voiced opinion or recommendation that a curb cut, appropriate curb cuts be presented on Route 126, and that the existing curb cut on Spyglass be closed. It just, is a burden. There are no other egresses to exit the property, and it is not just only the association, but there is also the circle of private residents in Jennings Road and what have you, that introduces probably another 50 to 70 families there as well. They only can enter and exit from Spyglass Hill. So it creates a problem. Obviously, it will be modified with traffic flow having to navigate a roundabout in addition to exiting and entering, in essence, what's our driveway. So we would certainly, support any effort to address alternative curb cut options in the plan, to be respectful of sort of the safety and other concerns that residents face in entering and exiting, and introducing not only north-south traffic as navigating a roundabout, in addition to customers and residents. It could create quite a burden and quite a challenge. I wouldn't want to have to come back and see accident reports be the impetus to make changes. I'd rather get in front of it and propose that changes be addressed and considered prior. But those are the two primary. Obviously, you've got a handle on noise abatement. Obviously, that is of a concern, but certainly if in your scope of review and analysis you're looking at impacts on traffic, that would be helpful, and be mindful that, sort of as a group, we would support some change to reduce the impact on residents on the hill. Thank you.
Just a real quick comment, can I make, Preston?
Oh, yeah.
About that, the curb cut and all that, if there's no left turn into the main entrance, then really that's the only way to get in is through your road. So I don't know what they're planning on doing with 126, but
Yeah.
if they don't allow a left turn along that other entrance, then you have to go up
Actually,
and in that way.
there are 3 entrances into the plaza.
There's one on the other side.
There's one behind the muffler
There's one
shop.
off of Elliott Street, kind of the
Does
secret
that go
hidden
through,
one.
is that separate property, or is that all, they have a right of way to go across that to get in there, or is that?
It's open to the public. I don't know what
I'm
the
just saying
legal
though,
status of
if
it,
you're on
but-
126,
But
and
yeah, if
the
you're on
only way to
126,
turn in, there's no left turn in there on 126.
you're on 126.
That's gonna be hard to find
Heading
that.
south, you're gonna take the left on a Spyglass Hill.
Yeah,
If you're
So
on
if we
126 going north,
so if
you're
that
probably
was
gonna
changed
take
though.
the main
Yeah.
entrance.
I think
But if
it's
that
going
was
to change in
changed,
the
then it'd
scope of that 126 project, because in essence, part of the proposal will probably be a center turn lane that sort
Then
of
it would
expands
allow a
upon the
left
one at the
turn.
light, but there may be one that would allow left-hand
It would have to
turn.
be something like
Because of
that.
course, we need it to turn, to enter anyway, so
We will need
now
to,
we're introducing more traffic
I just
to
have a
that.
feeling if everybody's going through the muffler shop, they
we
might
will need
have
to
an
look
issue.
at what the plan is for this with the rebuild.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So we
gotta
can
look at really the
understand-
DOT.
'cause if we just look at it now,
Yeah.
we're not gonna get the real picture of
Yeah.
what the
it's
long
a
term is.
two-part.
Yeah.
It's a
That we need
two-part,
to see
but,
Yeah.
if there's gonna be, how they plan on getting people in and out. Okay.
well,
That was it.
we know it's independent, because
Yes.
you can do something about Spyglass, but you can't do anything about curb cuts on 126. But,
Yes.
we just wanna make you aware that, it certainly, in our minds, produces a safety concern, and, we'd like to find a way to sort of improve upon that, and at least minimize any potential impact, But at the end of the day, we're in support of really the application. Certainly, we prefer use, and we prefer perhaps that type of use to a vacant building or a low transaction, high volume business. Obviously, it would be nice to introduce it to the business community, but certainly we'd like to at least make you aware that there are some of these concerns that exist.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, I just want to interject on a couple items that have been mentioned, in particular traffic. But just to step back, talking with the applicant on the dumpster and the dumpster noise, the applicant's willing to make sure that the enclosure is locked after hours once the restaurant is closed and reopened again in the morning for their use when they start business hours again, to help alleviate the concerns of the residences. I know Peter mentioned that he would talk and find out and look into that stop sign that's missing. I just wanted to note for the record, I'll reach out to the owner. We do have contact with them after the meeting this evening and ask that they look into it as well. If they do determine that it is something that they had there that's missing, we'll work with them and try to get that replaced. But I'll reach out to them directly as well to kind of start that process in conjunction with Peter, try to help that process along as well. Relative to the traffic, based upon the conversations tonight, it sounds like the board's looking for some additional traffic information, potentially a traffic study relative to the area. As one of the, I'm sorry, I missed who had mentioned, but one of the board members had mentioned that you have a left restriction in from 126, which is really controlled by DOT. And the only way to come southerly on Pond Street to get into site now is by Spyglass Hill Drive. I think part of the intent of the rotary, in particular at that intersection, is that you come to the rotary, you can come around and you can make a U-turn and come back the other direction and come in the main entrance, which is a lot better suited to handle the traffic in and out rather than coming up Spyglass Hill Drive. Obviously, I can't guarantee that folks in the area are going to use it in that method, but I believe that's one of the intents to help with the traffic in the area. I know DOT is doing several other improvements along that corridor to help with traffic and the traffic flow in that area, but we can certainly ask that that be evaluated and the existing curb cuts be evaluated as part of the traffic information to be submitted to the board.
Peter, if you're speaking to the existing owner of this plaza, I mean, is there an opportunity to talk to them about securing the other dumpsters on the site from the perspective of illegal dumping? I mean, can ask them.
I think conversations are free and we can talk about that with them.
Great.
Yes, my name is Tamara. I'm recently purchased a condo in the Spyglass Hill Road. I am not too familiar with the area, so I just want to offer a couple of pieces of information. If you do not know that, first of all, if you don't see the sign that you can't take a left, you will take a left because you're trying to get to where you're going. You do not know that there is a turnaround at Spyglass. You will never try to enter a residential area thinking there's a way for you to get into this plaza. And also, if you're thinking of putting a rotary there, please keep in mind that there is a very sharp turn right up the hill where traffic comes through that does not have really good visibility of what's going on around the corner, which is where Spyglass Hill residents exit, the Stop and Shop or the Shaw's people exit, as well as the oncoming traffic. My questions were kind of answered already. I was concerned about the hours of operation of the establishment. I'd like to also offer a piece of information from the eyes of an outsider. I come from the Boston area where things open late. Everything in this area closes at 9. This area dies really after 8, around kids' bedtime. 11 o'clock closing time also means an extra hour for staff to finish up cleaning, close up. That means add an extra hour for activity going on in this area. The other question, I'm not sure if it was asked, you said there'll be music. Do you plan to have any exterior audio? Speakers or, okay. So that was one of my questions. And the other one was the use of the Spyglass Hill as it sounds like a town road where residents exit the Spyglass property. That would definitely be impacted by people using that little exit from the plaza. And my concern is definitely there will be a lot of activity. So I hope that's considered when this project is being discussed. That's it.
And for your information on the issue with the Rotary and the redesign of Pond Street, that's a project that's been going on in town for 5-10 years, and it's outside of the scope of this project.
So this little guy right here, right?
No.
Where's the road? I'm probably not really.
No,
Can I take this?
Oh, sure.
Is it right this
Yeah, so,
this little guy.
right, so
Okay.
this is gonna be a rotary on
Right,
this
so
redesign.
where again, please? Right where we exit the, this would be a road,
Yes, that is the plan.
So then the corner I was talking about is this road up here where people come from the hill around, a very bushy area. You do not see what's here. If you have people suddenly stop, that could be, again, not that safe,
Got it.
but.
I just wanna make
Those are my
sure you know
comments.
that the plans for the redesign of 126 have been going on for many, many years.
Mhm.
So this, and it's been looked at by all kinds of experts who've probably missed things,
Mhm.
but, you know, it is what it is at this point.
Is it being implemented in alignment with this project? I'm not sure why it's
No,
being
no.
mentioned then now.
It's
with
being
the-
mentioned because we're aware that there's a lot of change going on,
Mm.
so we want this project to be built taking into account the expected change.
I understand. So then, yeah, definitely a big point of concern would be the entrance and exit to this establishment, because again, if you're not from the area and you're trying to take a left, and if there's not a rotary, you will not know that there's an easy way to turn around to take a right.
One
pretty much
quick thing, is there a way to put deterrents in, like on that little side road put 2 or 3 speed bumps? Because once people have to go over those, they start saying, I'm using the other entrance.
Keep in mind the school buses in afternoons, and there's a lot of children that get picked up and dropped off in the spyglass, that little area. So it would be definitely something to be considered seriously, and probably a bigger responsibility would be of the owners to make sure that the patrons and the staff are, again, in alignment with, or just know that there's a lot of residents and children and other family-like activities. So
Thank you.
That's it, thank you.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. I'm Paul McCarrick. I'm a resident of Butter. And most of the things I want to talk about have already been covered. I have to excuse my voice. It's an inherited thing from my mother, God bless her soul. My concerns were the traffic, which have been covered quite extensively. I do understand that early next year there's going to be a modification to that intersection, which would presumably precede the 126 developments. And I understand there's going to be a traffic light put in there. So it seems to me to consider this project, we have to, which you are doing, I realize, but for the purpose of the residents, we have to include the interchange between Spyglass Hill and 126, because it's currently precarious, it's dangerous, there have been several accidents, and if we now superimpose a lot of traffic for this, it's obviously, pardon me, gonna be a problem. But I understand that's on the table. My second concern is noise. I think the existing vegetation is not adequate screening for Spyglass Hill and the other residents that live further up on Sherborne Circle. I would like to see some studies done, get some acoustic engineers or somebody who knows about that stuff in there to determine what the noise impact is going to be. I can tell you that in the middle of the day currently, I personally can hear the little kiddies playing at the daycare center, which is fine. They're laughing and enjoying their time, and it's also during the daytime. But at 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock at night, noise travels right up that hill. There's something about the topography which causes that to happen. And I personally don't want to be listening to music at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, unless it's the Eagles. The final thing I'll mention is just something that came to me that should be investigated if it hasn't been already. and that is the state law and regulations regarding alcohol within the proximity of a child care center. I don't know if that's an issue, but certainly should be looked at if it hasn't been already, because the separation is about 60 feet. So that might be of some concern to parents and other citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will point out, on the alcohol issue, we do not grant the alcohol license. That's a separate license from the Board of Selectmen. So whether or not they're serving alcohol is for the most part not relevant to the planning board, but it is something to think about. So I'm glad you raised the issue.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the issuing the license. I'm wondering if at the state statutory level, if there's something that prohibits such an arrangement from a proximity basis.
Yeah, that's something that would be good to find out, yes.
Thank you, Preston and board members. Thank you. My name is Nancy Berry. I live at One Trailside Way. I've been a resident for 30 years. I've loved my home and have been very active in terms of beautifying what land we have and making it pretty in terms of outside and inside. I did have some specific questions regarding noise and what is being thought of to curb the noise. Right now, there are large windows that are in the old Blockbuster building. And I'm curious as to what is proposed in terms of some kind of acoustical remedy for those windows, which were built just to enclose a structure such as Blockbuster. But if we're talking about 99-seat setup in a 42-seat bar, there's going to be a lot of noise. And I'm curious as to what's being proposed to ameliorate the noise that will come from people, either eating or the people at the bar. So that's a big question for me. One of the things that I've enjoyed is the peace and the solitude and serenity, which you can't put a price on that. This is my home. This is where I go and entertain, and where I cook, and where I love to be. And I like to make it a beautiful home for others. It's my home. This is where I live. At this age, this is my home. I agree with the board member that mentioned possibly shutting off that kludgy little driveway. If you've ever driven down that, I mean, you better be heads up driving. I mean, I'm a good driver. I drove for a living, and it's hard to drive around there and navigate that. So I would definitely concur with having that closed, just for the purpose of, it's impossible. Even if you know it's how to do it, it's hard. It's very difficult. Just bear with me 1 second. I guess for me, there's noise, there's the stress factor with noise, there's also the noise, which I'm assuming there would be some kind of exhaust system for the food. And so what is that going to smell like? What's that going to sound like? How is that going to be living, sleeping in my bedroom at 11 o'clock? What am I going to be hearing? That's important. What am I going to hear? Can I sleep? Can I not sleep? That's a big deal for me. And I've talked to other people who are nurses and teachers, and they're getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And if they can't sleep, that's a big problem for those people. We bought our property for the peace and quiet and the nature. It is a beautiful beautiful complex. We thank the board and all of you for taking good care of the maintenance and the trees and everything you've done. We appreciate that very much. I'm not opposed to anyone having a drink. I'll have a glass of wine. But my concern is when you get 42 people sitting at a bar and it's a Patriots game, it gets real loud. And you bring in the component of alcohol. Again, I have a glass of wine. But when you bring in the component of alcohol, you change the mix of safety. And that's just the reality, along with a busy road and how am I gonna get in, how am I gonna get out, and where are we? So I'm here tonight with every best intention to represent myself, whatever homeowners are here, with the passion that I feel for living in my home with peace and serenity and solitude, which is the reason that we secured a hefty mortgage and pay our taxes and all of that. So I'd like some kind of an answer, if I could, of what all is being done for the insulation on the inside as well as those two big picture windows that's currently a blockbuster.
Well, I just want to make
You
clear.
need to come to the microphone so people
I
can
just
hear.
want to make really clear first
I'll move.
the hours of operation. I said 10 to 11. 10 to 11 is going to be probably on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday shouldn't be after 10 p.m. Probably 9:30. As far as has to do with noise, again, the noise is not gonna. We're not gonna be a nightclub. We're a restaurant. 42 seats showing on the bar. I don't know if you've seen the plan. They're not gonna be 42. They're gonna be 35 or less. And also, it's not gonna be any noise from the exhaust fans. The high-tech exhaust fans with high-performance filters that you're not basically getting any bad smells out of it. You're gonna get only good smell out of it. And as far as has to do with noise from inside the building, outside, I don't think you're gonna be able to hear anything, even if you're right outside in the parking lot.
Is that a
The-
guarantee?
99%.
I say this with respect.
Yes, yes,
Because I
and I'm
understand
answering
you're
you, yes.
wanting to have a
I have
new
no problem to
business.
answer your questions.
Yes, I appreciate your answer. That's it for me.
Are you good?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good, I may have more down the road.
Okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
I'm gonna get my pen.
I'll be glad to
Okay.
answer you.
Thank you. Thanks,
There you go.
you bet.
Hi, I'm Beth Reynolds, Economic Development Director for the town of Ashland. I just wanted to address a few things. I just kind of wrote a few notes when you were all talking. I'm wondering if signage might help. If people are going up Spyglass, and we don't necessarily know what's happening up there, you live there, you know. So it's good to hear this. If there's traffic going up there, could signage mitigate that? Could we say left-hand turn for the restaurant and keep people from going any further than up there? I mean, that's maybe something. I also wanted, the other thing with the traffic, maybe it's something we bring to the Traffic Safety Committee. They could maybe address that. They could go up there, they could drive the route, they can watch the route. It's worked in many other situations in town where we've had some issues that the residents have said, so maybe we bring that to the Traffic Safety Committee. I'm happy to help you with that. As well as the trash and the dumpsters. So this is not obviously the first time we've heard it. It happens a lot on 126. It happens in other areas. I want you to know that I am working with all of the trash companies that service our town. I'm trying hard to find them all. It's a process, and I'm working on that to make them aware that our bylaws say that the noise ordinance is from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So they're not allowed to do that, and we are following this, and we are on them for that. And I'm in contact with John Parsons, the owner of this property and another property on Elliott Street, and they're working with us to help mitigate that. So if that happens, just let the town know that. We can certainly help to work on that. And then As far as the entertainment license, that does go through the select board, so just so you know the process. So the alcohol license and the entertainment license does go through the select board. So fine, keep watch for that on their board agendas as well.
Which board is that?
The select board, the former Board of Selectmen. It's now the select board. And then lastly, I just have to say that this project and this design and these owners have been nice to work with. I've been in conversations with them for a little while when they started to think about Ashland. One of the things that we brought up in one of our initial conversations was the business incentive program. So we voted on town meeting to support a business incentive program that actually supports bringing businesses like this in. This is an amenities type of business, and this is what the town has said that they have wanted. So this has been a good match for that business incentive program. They will be taking advantage of that, and it was a nice way to help bring them into Ashland as a business-friendly community that we are. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Real quick, has anyone done any testing or anything to find out what the noise at 11 o'clock is, just the traffic noise and all that on 126? To compare it, because it seems like, I don't know what the traffic's like over there at night, but just to have like a baseline of, no?
You can hear it, but it's like, at 11 o'clock, you can hear the...
But just to give a reference, so like we don't want to like all of a sudden have something sticking out over the noise if it blends in with the background noise or...
It's soft.
Okay.
You hear the air of the car going back and forth, but
But there's a little level of noise just from the traffic.
like a feather dropping.
Okay,
There are a lot of motorcycles and police cars.
that's what I'm talking about.
I'm Brandy Kinsman at 6 Lucy French Way. I'm here just as an ordinary citizen. I'm not here representing the select board tonight, just my own opinion. I just wanted to voice my personal support for the application. I think that as we begin to redevelop 126, I think this is a great example of what is possible, that this blockbuster, I believe, has been empty since 2010. So for us to be able to redevelop and bring in something that is exciting to our town is huge. And I'm glad that folks have been voicing their concerns, and I feel very strongly that through the process and the work that you guys will be doing on the planning board, you guys will help the applicant put together the absolute best project possible and take into account all the citizens' concerns and questions. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm excited about the potential of what 126 could be, and I think this is a good example of what is possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening again, Mark Sony. I made it a purpose to wait this long to hear one side and the applicant side and Spike's Glass Hill side. Now, I still have some issues that I made known to our town management and to our economic director. They're not as strong as what the email I sent them was too. The building was vacant since 2010. And I'm looking at it saying, how come there's been nothing in there since then? And why has it been no other businesses that wanted it? I'm still gonna be saying, any sort of restaurant and stuff like that comes in, this just does not, in my eyes only, this is my only opinion of it, there can't be better businesses. And I'm saying that my zoning bylaws and professional profit businesses to get in there instead of foods. Something that makes Ashland $4.95 attractive with less noise in certain business hours. But a restaurant can be like, unfortunately, it was mentioned, in the Metropolitan Hontos and Spyglass Hill people, they're up the hill, yes, but I can also understand that it's a business that wants to be known. My question, or opinion, is that Plaza driveway area they're in, there is a little bit of a side entrance exit that could be, that goes to Spyglass and down to 126. Why can't that side little spot be curbed and blocked so side entrances cannot go up or back down Spyglass? And yes, there is behind the muffler place off of Elliott. That should be the main entrance and none off of Spyglass, to cut off anything that kicks that illegal left turn. Or comes up and goes up Spyglass, and if they missed it, they have to circle through Spyglass, then circle back down to hit it. There should be that one entrance to the plaza and none to Spyglass. But overall, I'm in zoning, combine the bylaws to dig through, and a restaurant, in my eyes, it says too much traffic, where traffic is not really needed anymore. In Spyglass, you'd be happier if a regular business with employees who are respectful and quiet, instead of what could be out in parking lots doing summers if people have too much to drink, could happen at a Fusion problem. Thank you.
So the muffler place is a separate property, right?
Excuse me?
The muffler shop, that's a separate lot?
Yes, that's a separate
Not part
lot.
of
Looking
this.
at the parcel map that I see in front of me on the site plan, that's a separate map.
So if you make that an entrance
Mhm.
and they don't like all the traffic, could they just put up a fence across their property line? And then you're stuck with no entrance?
Unless there's some existing easement there, yes.
So, I mean, there's a lot to
People
consider
are
before
driving.
you just send all the traffic in front of another business.
You have to look at the original permit of the of the center. And to tell you the truth, you probably have to look at the fire access and the emergency ingress and egress to the site before this conversation spins out of control and tailspins. Because I think that's the avenue we're going down, is that this is site plan approval, planning board. We can look at traffic, we can look at X, Y, and Z, but noise from entertainment, that goes to the Board of Selectmen. Alcohol licenses through the Board of Selectmen. We need to look at what's pertaining to the bylaw, and that's really it. And anything regarding ingress and egress to the site, we need to step back, look at the original permit for the center as a whole, and then move the discussion forward. Because where we're going is down a path that we can't turn around.
My point was just that, I mean, everybody's talking about closing off Spyglass Hill.
That's a reach, I would say, at this point,
At this point
because,
now, other
yeah.
sides of it.
That's
I
something
don't
we
wanna
can
get
look,
into big
that's something
construction
that
and
could
try to
be,
figure that out right now, but several people have said, need to close that off or shut it off.
that could potentially be considered once the 126 project is
Exactly.
completed. And that'd be something that would be brought up with the Traffic Safety Committee at that point.
Mhm. I agree
That's all.
100%.
I'm just responding to people.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this is an initial discussion, obviously, about
Yeah.
this site, a site which potentially could have a very nice amenity for Ashland. I don't think we should prejudge that just if they do in the future achieve an alcohol license, that there's gonna be some crazy amount of misbehavior and noise in the parking lot. I don't think we can prejudge that. We have to look at the project on what it is. And it seems like an opportunity, again, this first discussion with the community, the whole presentation seems very open to the things that were already brought up by the third-party reviewer and an understanding of how to make those things better. It doesn't seem like there was anything like, no, we're not gonna do that. So it looks like a business that's wanting to, make friends with Ashland, to be a part of this community and to work with us, to work with the community. So This is just the first step in that, and the first step is, hey, bringing up these concerns that we have, and we see how those concerns to be addressed, and then we go on to step 2 and see if it's a good solution for all of us. So again, I agree with some of the other members of the at the table here too, that we don't want to go down roads that it's just the wrong time and place and board to be discussing some of these things, and instead be optimistic and obviously still questioning in order to come up with potentially a great solution for Spyglass Hill, for the owners of the restaurant, for the plaza, for the business community, and for Ashland as a whole. We have a real opportunity here instead of having an empty building for another 10 years, right? So let's look at the opportunity and see what happens.
Excuse me, you have to come to the microphone.
What's the next step?
The next step, a proposed restaurant is an allowed use in this district. It requires site plan review. And so the next step concerning site plan review is, entails design review. And so the applicants have to meet with the design review committee to look at the architecture of the building. And then it comes back to the planning board for a vote of site plan review concerning ingress, egress, dumpster location, areas of the snow. Those are the main elements of site plan review. But I just want to kind of put it out there that a restaurant's an allowed use in this district.
And they may have even other issues with fire department, right? With that one little entrance to their parking lot.
I think we need to look at how everything was permitted way back when this plaza was permitted as a whole.
Hello, I'm George Dorsey from 37 Captain Ames Circle. Once the traffic circle is active in place, then the person who wants to go to that restaurant, if they're coming from the north, from Holliston, they come down, there's that little turnoff right inside of right in front of the restaurant. Very close to it is the one turnoff of 126 that goes into the restaurant. Okay? If the person's coming from the north, coming down 126, if they go to the traffic circle, go around the traffic circle, go south, they can enter the same deal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So that would get away from the problem of those concerned about having the other entrances and exits. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
I think it's also if and when the project moves forward, some issues of noise can also be, it's part of the design process as well. It's part of the ambiance of the restaurant to try to control as much noise within the restaurant as possible, not for the noise escaping out into the environment, for the pleasantness of the people inside the restaurant as well. I'm sure there's an architect involved in the restaurant design, and they'll be looking at that hopefully as part of the restaurant.
Quick question, Elaine Preisman. I am a resident on Spyglass Hill Drive, and I also a real estate broker in the area, and I do a lot of business in Boston, Cambridge, Somerville. So I'm very familiar with the situation when we have a lot of people who live in the area and restaurant is there, especially in Boston and those areas. So it's actually much better to have something wonderful, which I hope it will be wonderful if it will be there, than empty building. Completely agree. What is the timing on this project? When is this restaurant, in a best case of scenario, gonna be open?
We're hoping by March.
Sometime in March. Yeah. Okay. Can we get an answer? Because we already heard about good smells, which is fantastic. Another wonderful thing. It's much better than bad smells. We also hear about upscale food. Can we get an idea what kind of restaurant is that? What kind of food is it? And the reason I'm asking, because from now on, because right now it's an open, all my customers and clients will ask this question. So we've heard about restaurants supposed to be open right here. What kind restaurant is gonna be? We have to answer this question. We cannot just say, oh, we don't know, because it's gonna right there slash the whole thing. People want to know what they buying. So can we get an answer?
So that will help your business.
Absolutely.
That will cost you.
No, that would cost you. So
I think,
I'm gonna be okay.
I think the kind of question is like kind of knowing, what kind of, is there,
American food.
We're talking hamburgers, we're talking, yes, that's what we,
Steaks, burgers, salads.
got it. Now we can say it's an American food restaurant. Thank you. That's pretty much, that's what we want to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what kind of control, obviously, anyone has on it. I think there is obviously a difference, a community welcoming a restaurant like we're going to open a Hooters or something.
I didn't imply that. But
versus
okay.
versus an upscale restaurant that's meant for finer dining or something. I agree that there's restaurant can mean a lot of things, and
with
so
the perfect right by, yes, child facilities, whatever we have there, yeah.
I hate to even say that name like on
I
camera,
would
but I had
also-
to do it.
I'd also say that we're permitting a restaurant. We're not permitting a particular type of restaurant. And that's important because if this restaurant should fail at some point in the future, this permit would allow somebody else to come in and operate a different restaurant at the under the same permit without necessarily having to come back to us. So,
You're absolutely correct.
just because they're saying they're going to serve American food doesn't mean it's not going to be Asian food or Mexican food or something completely different. But it's good to know.
I don't have any problems with either. It's just the question that's usually come up from people who heard something, because internet is a wonderful thing and people are aware of many things that we don't even know about. So this question will pop up, so I really appreciate that you answered. Thank you.
Sorry, if I may, just to circle around on the traffic questions and comments that were brought up tonight, just to kind of hopefully put a bow on them for the evening. We've heard all the questions, comments, concerns. We're certainly willing to look into them, try to address some of them to the best of our ability. I do want to make just the board aware, obviously this is a new lot as part of an overall plaza. There are other entities that will be impacted by potential changes to traffic patterns, curb cuts, things of that nature. The remaining businesses that are in there, the current owner of the property. There's been discussions about access off of Elliott Street, which is a separate lot with a different business, which potentially has a separate lessee in there, which has certain rights to those access and would be concerned about additional traffic and things going through that entrance as well. So there's other entities involved. We'll take the comments and concerns, or we'll relay them to the current owner of the property. Have some discussions with them, provide any additional information relative to traffic that the board requests, and certainly willing to come back and discuss those at the next meeting that the board decides to continue this to.
Okay. And one thing we should definitely have for the next meeting is a copy of the plans for 126 between showing from the intersection of Elliott Street to Spyglass Hill, so we can just have an understanding of what we're expecting the long-term future to be there. I know we've all heard about what's happening. We probably looked at plans, years ago when it was in the process, but I don't think any of us are current.
No, I can get those. I've been working with Mass DOT, and they're completing their final, I would say, plans or in engineering site plans for the 126 corridor.
Okay. Yeah, if we could get whatever the latest version of that is.
I'm waiting for it myself, but I can, before the next meeting, I can kind of press and hopefully get some ideas.
So the question now is, how much time do we want to wait on this so that we are not delaying the project, but also giving you enough time to get everything done to be fully ready for the next meeting? So, we could come back in 2 weeks on the September 26th. We also have meetings in October on the 10th and the 24th.
Yeah, look at scheduling for the 26th, and obviously if we need more time coming into that, we'll certainly reach out to the board to talk about a continuance at that point.
Okay.
And also, while you're looking at the traffic stuff, you might wanna make sure that that little road going out the back isn't required by the fire department for some reason. I've seen them put in access because of how they do
The Spyglass Hill
equipment,
access?
yeah. Just to make sure, I mean, sometimes, I know it doesn't look like it, but you never know.
Well, I don't think that would be within our purview to close that off at this
Yeah,
point.
But he's gonna study the traffic thing, you might wanna make
Yeah.
sure that that wasn't
Yeah.
required at the time.
And what is required might change with the
Yes,
126
exactly.
redesign.
Yeah, so, just,
So, I mean, we've met with the tech review earlier this week. Fire was obviously a part of that. They're fine with access, ingress, and egress as it is today with the curb cuts and the proposed. So we can certainly reach out to them again
Like
to
if you
see if
took
they
that
had any
one
concerns
out,
about,
yeah.
if this was removed with the roundabout, you know, are there any concerns from your perspective on them being able to actually get, you know, safety apparatus in and out of the site?
Okay. All right, so September 26th, do you know what we have on our schedule for the 26th?
81 West Union.
So what time should we set this for? I don't wanna have a big lag in the middle, but I also don't want to.
7:45.
Wait, yeah, 7:45, that sounds good.
Could go 9 o'clock.
Would 7:45 work for you?
That's fine.
Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to continue this until 2 weeks from tonight on September 26th at 7:45.
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 4-0.
Great. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Very nice to meet you. Of course.
Yes. No, that's fine. We are still continuing our meeting now, so we have other items, but no, we're done with this item, but we have several more items, so we need to move on.
Yeah, fun one.
Our next item is
Mike's
128
watching right
Main
now. Mike's sitting there.
color
The edge
determination.
of his chair.
Per condition 29 in the planning board decision for 128 Main Street, all facade material, i.e. siding and roofing, shall be of high quality, such as hardy plank siding with color scheme as per plans or as otherwise approved by the planning board at a later date. Approval not to be held unreasonably. If for some reason hardy plank is unavailable, material of similar quality shall be proposed and approved by the planning board designee.
So just speaking to this real quick, so 128 Main Street, as many of you know, has been taken down and raised. The applicant, Carlos, is moving forward. He did have a pre-construction meeting. One of the outstanding issues was the color of the building, kind of when I reviewed the permit. And so with that said, we are just trying to, I would say, dot the i's and cross the t's on this one. And so I know, speaking to planning board member Dale, you were on a committee and worked with the town manager, Michael Herbert, and reading this email that I received. We have chosen a neutral color of beige because of such of a big building. A more pronounced color would be overpowering. It also matches the neutral colors in town, in the downtown, for example, Town Hall and 100 Main Street. It doesn't contrast with the red buildings like the Ocean House or Ashland House, which would be across the street. The brick matches the fire station and the facade of 21 Main Street. And so a lot of times I would say that people are looking for consistency in architecture and color in the downtown, and we're hoping the proposed change, making the building a little bit more similar to the rest of the downtown. And so I believe this is Navajo beige, would be the color off the color scale.
It's a great color.
That is a planner's, I would say, color scale.
That's hardy plank, right?
Hardy plank,
It's a
yes.
hardy plank color.
It's a hardy plank color, but that is the color the the applicant is looking to make his new building, with the reasoning coming from the, I would say, committee that was made up of the town manager, planning board member Dale, and then I forget who else the third member was.
Oh, Cliff.
Cliff Wilson.
Yeah.
Cliff
From the
Wilson of the
Historic Society.
Historical Society. So that is the color, so I would just ask the planning board to review the color and, if possible, accept the new color.
I am totally not an expert on this, but looks nice to me.
Some of the little committee were really entrenched more in this color than others. I think it's good. They went with the black windows frame and black window.
I think it's a
And then-
nice accentuation, actually. I
Yeah.
think it punches nicely.
I like it.
I'm really not good with the aesthetics.
I
And since they're tearing it down and building it now, I think need to go with.
Need to decide.
I think the black window trim, I think it's a new, I've seen a lot of it, and I think it looks pretty
Yeah.
good. And then also the metal roofing, up at the top, kind of breaking up the asphalt shingle roof is a nice touch too.
Yeah, I saw the initial renderings, I think which had blue
Yeah.
on them, which is,
Mm-hmm.
I liked
Yeah,
in itself. But I think as you spoke about, it is a large building on that street. There are other kind of well-loved buildings on the street with a very pronounced color. And so while the building might be a little quiet with these colors, doesn't mean it's without character, and seems fine.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a couple of curious questions?
If you'll keep it short and go to the microphone.
Okay, thank you. But I marked this on again, I saw this in the agenda, and I was thinking it was gonna be a whole different way of doing things, but I made my own notes. And yes, it's according to, our town bylaw zoning and all that stuff. I want to ask them anyways if it can be answered. This comes under the Ashland Code Administrative Procedures. Page 282.152, Section 8O. You may not have them, but this is from the zoning bylaws that I've been. Peter, thank you. This is my Bible now.
The planning board may not have them, but I do, Mark.
Yes. So I'm asking them condense, and if the planning board way of thinking can be the same, or what is the difference? The one is the continuance length, blank walls adjacent to streets. Does that have anything to do with this?
No.
No, all this really has to do with is whether they're going to build it with this beige color scheme or the more bluish gray color scheme that was previously proposed. That is the only thing we're deciding tonight on this, because they already have the permit to build the building.
Just the color.
It's just the color scheme, that's all.
Okay, agricultural detail existing buildings. It is an existing building, right?
No, it's a new building.
It's a new building.
Oh, okay. Okay, so. I might be going down a whole new road with no answers, and I won't be surprised, I won't surprise myself. Does this have any criteria through the planning board?
The only criteria is whether we like this color scheme better. Because we already did the site plan review, and we just had a condition that they would come back and get approval if they were, for a different color scheme.
Did you go through comparabilities of styles and scales of building?
I believe that's already been talked about at the previous public hearing, Mark.
Yeah, that was part of the site plan review.
And the facade, roof lines, interior,
That was part of site plan review.
Just the color.
Well, And I know I'm going down a road that's gonna have a dead end on my side. Relation of building structures and each other with adequate light circulation, privacy, and separations.
Yeah, we've dealt with all of that site plan review. Unless you have comments about the color, I'm gonna ask you to sit down.
Well, I'm done.
All right, thank you.
Do we have to vote on that or
So,
anything?
yeah, we should vote on this. I gather that the sense of the board is that they should go ahead with this color scheme. So, I would entertain a motion to approve, the proposed color scheme of Navajo beige?
Navajo beige.
Navajo beige.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 4-0. All right.
Mike can go to sleep now.
Our next item of business is listed as the Lower 126 Group Informal Discussion. This is a group of residents that formed, I believe, and they can correct me if I'm wrong in my introduction, over concerns about the development at the former Marconi's infusion site that's been discussed in town. There is actually no permit that has been filed before the planning board at this time. So this is, though the developer did do a presentation on what they were thinking about earlier this summer, just to get some reactions, and now some residents would like to do something kind of similar on their side. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right.
I just would like to, excuse me, before you get going, I just want to let everyone know that I would say an application is imminent. I would say, and the gentleman, Mr. Zamudo, does plan to file an application. I would say in the coming in the coming time. I would say.
Yeah.
However, at this point in time, a complete application has not been filed.
Okay. So with that, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you want to tell us.
So we're here representing the Lower 126 Group. It's formed by concerned neighbors and citizens to have a voice as stakeholders concerning the development affecting us. I'm Catherine Jerzyk from 11 Rodman Road. We thank you for the opportunity to have the informal discussion with the planning board. Right now, I honestly feel like I'm at the bottom of a giant cliff looking up to surmount, because there's been an overwhelming amount of efforts to push the project forward, and it's basically thumb on the scales, right? It wasn't the planning board, but that's why we're here to. I don't know that this one meeting with the planning board can overcome those efforts, but we're here to discuss the Pond Street mixed-use overlay criteria and requirements. And at this point, I'm pleading for the independent evaluation of the project, regardless of the efforts that have taken place to support. I know the planning board's independent. I understand that. I also know when there's that tremendous amount of effort, that's going to be difficult. So I think hearing from us, and again, we thank you for the opportunity. We believe that if the criteria and requirements are fully and carefully observed, Ashland will have a great opportunity to support the goal of economic development on the corridor and bring improvements to our neighborhood and the corridor. Using the Pond Street mixed-use overlay requirements means we collectively, developers, neighbors, and the community have a chance for placemaking. That's what that's about, and real improvement. The proposals we've seen today are substantially inferior meeting the goals and criteria of the Pond Street mixed-use overlay. There are many options for 12 Pond Street that could be done by right. You wouldn't be hearing from us. When you choose to use the Pond Street mixed-use overlay zoning requirements, something more than bringing an apartment building with limited retail space to the corridor is necessary. Ashland deserves better, our neighborhood deserves better. The Pond Street mixed-use overlay requires better. So in order to keep ourselves organized, we have a PowerPoint to go over those requirements and criteria. And Janet's gonna go through that.
So the PowerPoint is to keep me organized, not to bore you. And I understand it'll take a minute. If you want to do jumping jacks, that's fine. I know you've been here a while. anybody seeing my thumb drive? That is not it. Sorry.
Display is working now.
Well, that's good. So now can you see my thumb drive? Because I'm not seeing it. Yeah. That's probably not it.
Doesn't look like it's
Pull it
showing
out,
up.
not the screws up, and put it back in. Come on, thank you. All right then. Oh, great. I'll just. Yeah. Let me just try it one more time. Open computer.
I don't do Windows.
I don't either. All right. Well, it does see it, so. All right, well, I'm gonna have to sadly read you what I wanted to talk to you about. No. What's that?
I think you can still present. I'm just going to see if I can just get it to pop up. If it's just this one.
Yeah. I mean, I brought a computer, but.
It's not recognizing this.
It's strange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a few, so I'm just going to see
Try
if
'em
it
all.
tries.
There's three on this side too. Want one over here?
Yeah, we'll just try one. If not, it just may not.
Am I allowed to plug that into my computer?
Does it have a VGA? We can try it.
I can.
I'll be 30 seconds.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right. You just put it on top.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Now we just gotta hope my phone doesn't ring. All right.
Oh, excellent.
Yes. Now I just. All right. Thank you for waiting. Okay, so what I want to do is go over the purpose and the criteria and review standards of the Pond Street Mixed Use Overlay District. As they apply to this project specifically, but also because I voted for this at town meeting. And so I want to check my understanding of, as a citizen, of what I voted for against what your understanding of your responsibilities is, so that we can be on the same page about expectations, all right? So the purpose of the Pond Street Mixed Use Overlay District is to promote economic development
encourage more efficient use of infrastructure, add vitality to our 126 corridor, which nobody will argue, like, if you don't come over there now, it's because you don't see a need to, and so it's to make you want to come over to our corridor and give better access to employment opportunities. So economic development means some specific things. Along 126, what it would mean to us is that people from the other side of town would be spending money at establishments, doing business, taking a class, engaging citizens, kind of like the Dairy Queen did, right? People come over to go to Dairy Queen. Or they would commute from elsewhere to their jobs, to their offices, to their service businesses on our side of town. It doesn't mean an increase in property taxes. It doesn't mean profit to a developer, and it doesn't mean housing creation. Those are not anybody's definition of economic development. So a scholarly definition could be this one, or any other one you can find. In our neighborhood, we like this one because it talks about generating improved and broadly shared economic well-being. And that's what we all hope for, and that's what we aspire to have along our corridor in businesses. We have some businesses we really like. Some of them are cute, some of them are not so cute, but thriving. And we appreciate all of them. So this criteria, it's not actually a criteria, it's a purpose. The second purpose, more efficient use of infrastructure. This project would actually remove the continuous curb cut, and that would be definitely a more efficient use of infrastructure. The 126 revitalization project that's scheduled to come in 2020 is going to do that all along our corridor. So this isn't a special project in that, but it does do that, and we're looking forward to that all along the strip. Another purpose is vitality to the corridor. So vitality for us would be measured in places that civic engagement can happen, the public can gather, there's economic activity. This project doesn't really generate that. And better access to employment opportunities. So we're looking at 7.7% of the space is non-housing space. That's not particularly a lot of employment opportunities. It's empty commercial space, and it's less square footage in commercial space than already exists there, right? So as Kate said, it requires a special permit, and that can only be given by you. And that process should start when it gets to you, right? Like the negotiation process, that's our understanding, is that anything that happened with the town to bring it to your table is just like it happened, but when it gets to you, that's when we start talking about what this project is supposed to be, all right? So there are 8 development criteria and 5 review standards that I don't really understand the difference between these, to be honest. I don't know why some of them are called criteria and other are review standards, but that's what we voted for, and so the people that crafted this overlay district thought that they needed to be separate. Maybe they didn't want to give you 13 things to consider, and so they parsed it out as 8 and 5. But I'm going to go through some of these. The first one is adequacy of the site in relation to the size of the proposed structure. And that's the first one, and it's a big bone of contention. We do not feel that it's adequate. So the 16 units exceeds the number of units that it's allowed to have. You get 1 unit, and I know you don't have it before you, so I'm talking about a project that nobody's been talking about, but everybody's been talking about. But it exceeds the number if it's going to exceed the number, that needs to be negotiated with you, okay? So that needs to be brought to you to be discussed about if that should happen and why. So my expectation is that's how that will be handled, is that if you look at a project that exceeds the number that's allowed, then you say, well, that isn't right, and then you start there with, that's not allowed, why should we do this? But I also, yeah,
Can I just pipe in? Excuse me, I'm the town planner, Peter Magic. We don't really have a project in front of us.
I know.
And so I think we need to stick to the bylaws. We're more than happy, the planning board and myself, we're more than happy to have a conversation with the group that we said. However, I think we need to stick to the bylaws and leave any project out of it. Because we're getting into too deep into the details. I think let's stick to the bylaws and stop having comparisons to the Charlie Zamudo 12 Pond Street project, because that it may or may not happen, but I think we are here tonight to review the bylaws and the bylaws alone. And so I think that's what we need to stick to.
That will need to all be resaid once the process starts, because as you said,
okay,
anything that happens before they start the process to the planning board doesn't really count with the planning board, and that includes any discussions tonight. So
I agree.
Maybe we should leave that elephant in the back corner over there.
Okay, we can. So I am simply asking that if we are going to negotiate, that the negotiation starts with you.
Yes.
That it comes to the table and you go, do we need to do this? And convince me that we need to do this.
Really quick, in here, if you read it, there are incentives to add that.
That's right, and there's a lot of other, I know.
And that's an incentive. So
That's
if they
true,
put
but
affordable
you need to
housing in there-
negotiate that.
I know, we will. We haven't even started that process, but I'm just saying, to your point, you're
Mhm.
wondering why we should do this. There's actually incentives in there with affordable housing to get the extra unit.
I get that. There's other
So,
things in
yes,
there
so-
too that
yes,
I
know
would
that,
like to
but-
see, okay?
But nobody mentions that there's actually incentives
Because we
built
can't
in,
talk
so-
about that yet.
Exactly. Well,
Exactly. All right. So, the second criteria, adequacy of the provision of open space. This is a criteria. Adequacy of the provision of open space, its accessibility to the general public and/or its association with adjacent or proximate open spaces. That's a criteria. It's not an incentive. It's something we're looking for in a project. That could be, this is one definition. You could find others. I chose the EPA because I respect them. It could include green space, schoolyards, playgrounds, public plazas, vacant, well, we're not gonna call it a vacant lot, public seating areas, accessible to the public, open piece of land. So we are looking for that. It's a criteria. Criteria number 3, suitability of the site for the proposed uses. So we want to make sure that we follow our own studies that we paid good money for. This is from the Housing Production Plan. And it says, when possible, site housing to minimize exposure to outdoor pollutants. It specifically says that housing should not be developed near Interstate 90 or routes 135 or 126 without taking necessary precautions. So I am hoping that when you consider any project, that we don't make housing a substantial part of it. It would be unfair, especially if we were going to do affordable housing and say, let's put our most vulnerable tenants in a most highly polluted environment. Ashland parking bylaws say that no off-street parking shall be maintained within 10 feet of a street. We expect that since it's part of the parking bylaws, that would be something in your criteria to look for, that the site is suitable if it meets the parking bylaws. So we don't want to see any off-street parking within 10 feet of a street. Criteria 4, impact on traffic, pedestrian flow, safety. So we know that 126 will be served better by not having a continuous curb cut. We get that, okay? It will have a huge impact to put a project with a lot of traffic that goes onto the two side streets. So we do implore you to consider the neighbors that have to get out on 126 in order to get anywhere, and what the traffic, how the traffic will be impacted. You might, I don't know if it's in your purview to ask for a traffic study, but you might. Number 5. This one is the one that our neighborhood really feels most personally. It's the impact on the visual character of the neighborhood. When we go to our neighborhood, we're going home. When you go to our neighborhood, you don't see the same things, okay? It's not about whether you like the building that's being put there, it's about whether it fits in the character of our neighborhood. We paid for another report, the Cecil report, which says the character of Pond Street will likely remain strip commercial with the potential to enhance both the quality and quantity of uses over time. The types of opportunities identified are consistent with the type of corridor that Pond Street is today, and consistent with the overall corridor vision of an enhanced commercial corridor. It goes on to set a vision for the corridor that reinforces commercial frontage on Pond Street with residential and light industrial uses set behind that frontage. We would like to see commercial uses along our street. We would like to see vibrant businesses along our street. That is what we thought we were voting for when we were voting for economic development. We didn't think we were voting for masquerading more housing as commercial development. We want to see real commercial development. And if it's mixed use and it's cute, let's do it. And if it's an excuse to put housing by having some more empty storefronts, we don't want to see it. It's not going to help us. It's not doing anything for us. And we do have to go home here. There's 8 criteria. Okay, we're on number 6. We're doing pretty good. Number 6, adequacy of utilities, including sewage disposal, water supply, and stormwater drainage. So this would be really important, especially because of the commercial potential along the corridor. We do have sewage that goes through Framingham, right? That's where our sewage goes. The storm drains are not adequate. This is Douglas Road, 45 minutes into rain, okay? So this will need to be a consideration. Number 7. So I'm really happy we had the foresight to put this one in as a town. Degree to which the proposed project complies with the stated purpose. Remember, those purposes were increased vitality, economic development. Yeah, you can look at them, you know what they are. I'm glad we put that in. I want to make sure that we remember the purpose when we're looking at a project. And then criteria 8, impact of the proposal on the existing mix of uses of structures and businesses. So, sorry, I have so many papers because I had to print them big enough that I could see them without my glasses. So, impact cannot be overstated for this project, and it's because it's the first one. This project is going to set the tone for what's possible and permitted. If you want to change the face of the corridor in a way that is different from the way we voted, this project might be the way to do that. if you want to maintain the integrity of the people that thought they were putting sticky dots on possibilities, then tread carefully. Please stick close to the purpose and the criteria. And now I'm going to go into the 5 review standards, and maybe at some point you can help me understand how they're different. So those are the criteria. Review standard number 1. Ensure that the Pond Street Mixed-Use Overlay District becomes a unique and identifiable place and destination for residents, visitors, and business affairs. So there's been a lot of building going on in Framingham, and I have to drive through Framingham to get to a lot of places I need to go. I'm wondering if when you drive by Mount Waite, if you say to yourself, wow, I can't wait to go shop there. Because I don't. When I drive by that, I go, wow, a lot of people live there. I want what we do along 126 to be, wow, I want to try that out. Not, okay? I want people to recognize that businesses are there. I want them to have the opportunity to shop there. I want them to know how they can get in, how they can get out easily. I want real economic vitality. I'm telling you, this is what we are asking for. And this is what we were promised when we voted for the Pond Street Mixed Use Overlay District. Otherwise, we could just use the regular zoning. Review standard 2. Enhance the social and economic vitality of the district by preserving property values and promoting the attractiveness as a place in which to live, work, visit, and shop. I've told you what I think about that, so I will not bore you with that again. Number 3, enhance our economic resources. I don't believe, well, I'm not talking about a particular project, but I'm hoping that you get some evidence of how a project will enhance our economic corridor resources. Number 4, promote and encourage building design and building alterations that are of high quality in appearance. I am not going to argue about the quality of anybody's work. I've seen a number of high quality buildings, and it is your job to make sure that it's going to be that, but you know more about that than I do. So I am going to talk about appearance, because that goes back to that other criteria, which is about the suitability for the neighborhood and the fitting in the visual impact. We could have things that offered us open space. We could have something where the public could gather. It's one of the criteria, and we have the power to say, yes, this is what we want, and that's why we put it in the criteria. Please fit it in.
Can I stop you right there? Just for my own knowledge, information. Is this a building that is appealing to you?
It doesn't matter. I put it in here because I like
there must have been a purpose that you put this in your PowerPoint.
Because it has open space.
I see that, but is this an attractive building?
And again, I put this in here because it has open space. So the reason I'm not answering your question is because I'm one person, okay? I would love you to have this conversation with my neighborhood, because I can't speak for, I would love you to look at the sticky dots that we did years ago. I know you weren't here then, okay? So, and God, I hope they're not sitting rolled up in your office someplace, but
I've been through 2 master plans in the last 2 communities I've been to, so I've done plenty of sticky dot exercises, and I agree they're pretty obnoxious.
Right.
But maybe I'll ask everybody that's here in the room tonight: is this an appealing building?
Like, for us, we probably need to envision how that fits on the property we're talking about.
Because I don't mind talking about this building. We just can't talk about, this is a great example. It's a 3-story building, right?
It's got at least as much commercial space on a floor as there is residential space on a floor, right?
Okay, I'll give you that one.
Has open community space in the front.
Right? People go there and go, wow, I want to sit at that little table and write. People don't do postcards anymore, but I'm going to sit on my computer and social media myself to death. This is a place
into.
where people will go, though,
I just
right?
have one question. Have you seen the development that they're talking about personally?
I'm just looking at this.
No, I mean,
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. But
So
I
you've
think
seen
that's
the-
it's outside of the realm of this conversation. Tonight. I just want to focus on this building
Right.
as a current
Well, no,
conversation
because you
piece.
just mentioned Charlie Zamuto, and I figured, okay, you must have seen the property that he, because you've met with him.
I've met with him. I know exactly what he's doing. However, I think for this discussion, we have to look at the bylaws, and I'll use this property as a perfect example of our discussion tonight. But is this building an attractive building to your community along Pont, in the Pont Street area?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it also
Because-
depends
That
on
answers my question, I would say.
Me personally, I'm saying.
Okay.
I've got green space, I've got breathability, I've got attractiveness, I don't have the postage stamp,
Okay.
okay?
That's
So
what I'm
just
looking
saying,
for.
That's just my own opinion, though.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know about everybody else.
No, that's what I'm looking for, your opinion.
Okay.
But to me, I look at this and it goes vertically up 3 feet. I mean, 3 stories.
We didn't have a problem with the 3 feet because it wasn't a postage.
Okay.
This is not a postage stamp.
Okay.
I see grass, I see green space, I see trees, I see
Frontage.
setback, I see
Okay.
it all. Am I crazy about the color? No. I mean,
I agree with you.
again, it's a beige. I'm not a beige person. But I mean, if you're comparing it to what he's proposing, yeah, personally, I like this better than what he's proposing.
Thank you.
Okay, next one you're gonna have to use your imagination a little bit more for. So imagine that the first floor was commercial and not residential, right? But if we had something that was cute and had a place for people to go, again, I'm asking for that open space criteria. That would be a benefit to our neighborhood. We'd go, wow, you're giving us something. The Cecil report talked about having varying heights, so see that there's space there and airflow can get through. We would like that better than a mass facade, okay? And we would also not be opposed to finding a cute little retro restaurant destination for Ashland. It's a possibility. Our neighborhood is worth waiting for the right project. It would be an alternative use, and it would have to be really cleverly done.
Did you give any of those pictures of the ones you liked to the developer?
He didn't ask me for any.
Whether you asked or not, if you want him to see what you like, maybe you should send him pictures of that. Maybe they'll integrate some of that into their plan if they decide to.
You wanna make a difference. Let's continue with this.
No,
Okay,
Mark,
so-
I'm making a point. They're showing us things that we wanna do. We're not the developer. We're not coming with a plan and a permit. Maybe you need to show that to the developer, and maybe he'll say, oh, maybe we can put some of this.
And
Until you
again,
try
when
it, I mean,
close
we don't,
doors,
we
they won't
can't,
accept it.
we can't, it's not our project. We're not
Yeah,
paying for
they
it.
won't accept
All
it.
we're doing is approving it,
You
so
just say-
showing us what you want.
Just say citizen.
Right,
We can't
okay.
Marty,
Thank you,
but-
thank you.
excuse me?
Go,
No,
Mark, yes, go.
Can you just let me talk?
I'm
It's
just,
it's true.
Conversation.
I think
No,
most.
I'm suggesting
Mhm.
that if you showed those to the developer, maybe it would put some ideas in their head when they decide to present, if they decide to do it. Maybe they're just not thinking about some of those open spaces because they may be thinking you don't want a 3-story building, but you're showing a 3-story building as long as it has open space. Maybe if you send that to them, let them know what you're thinking about. They may or may not, or they may not do this whole thing. Hypothetically, they may integrate some of that stuff into their plan.
They might.
Showing us is not gonna do any good because they're drawing up a plan. We're not
Well-
drawing a plan.
So,
Well, it's
It's
they're-
just a
they're
suggestion.
showing us so that they're trying to suggest what our decision-making process should be.
Exactly, so if they.
And I fully expect them, once this comes before us, to come back with a very similar presentation of the, but more specific to the project of this project doesn't have this, this is what we want.
I understand that.
And
I'm
I
just-
think they have. and-
So,
and-
can I
and
address both
correct-
of you for a
Correct me
moment?
if I'm wrong, but I believe you have had discussions with the developer, and the developer is aware that you're interested in these things, and.
Right,
So
so,
you've
Sorry,
shown them
that-
the pictures
You may not
like
have shown
this
them
of
the
what
same
you want.
pictures, but that's
So-
been communicated.
That was it. I was just saying, if you showed
no, I
the
appreciate that, and,
developer
and
that,
I
your
really want to
point.
address that, because that's part of our concern, right, is that there isn't when a developer asks to meet with us, I appreciate it. The developer asked to meet with us and presented what he wanted us to like. He didn't engage us in a way that felt like he wanted our conversation about what we'd want different. And so that's like, yes, it puts us in a weird position of having to find out who's going to listen to us when we participated before and said what we thought we were telling people that we wanted. Then the developer says, well, how about this? And we're like, holy smokes, are you kidding me? And so then he comes back and says, well, how about this? And we're like, I don't think you heard us. So it's like, it can't be like that. There should be a better process, and you didn't create it, but it is a problem.
But then on the other hand, the developer's probably saying, we came back with this, and no, they want this. And we came back with this, and no, they just
Well,
want
since
this.
I can't
So
talk
you guys want
specifically
something.
about the
I know, but
project,
I'm
I
just-
can't
let's
tell you
sa-
what
save
my
this till-
specific concerns are, so I will wait on that.
Let's continue on.
I will,
I think we've hit a point where I think we just need to continue on, so why don't
Yeah.
we just,
Well, it's because
So-
you're acting like we're gonna design the building. I mean,
No.
they're gonna present some if they do.
right. And so what I'm asking is, please do not hold our neighborhood hostage to a greedy owner who seems to ask so much money for a piece of property that the developer has to build something that is out of scale for our neighborhood, okay?
But do you understand, my point is, we're here, we don't have anything presented. So we're gonna have to go through this whole process
Mm-hmm.
again when he presents something.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but
So we're
Like-
going back and forth and
I
we
know.
don't even know what's gonna
If the
happen.
process started here, we would be actually talking, if the process started here and not before now, then we could be talking about something instead of talking about nothing. But the process has started, and it's been worked on since March. I don't know, Dale, when did they start talking about it?
I don't know exactly.
Okay? So, I can't talk about it because it hasn't been brought to you. But it's been, like, why doesn't the process start with it being brought to you? So that we can all talk about it and say, you know what, that's not gonna work. And then I can say, I don't like it because it's just too big, but I can't, all right?
Well, part of the reason it doesn't come, you want to just stop and just get on with this, because part of the reason I'm trying to explain is that they come to us early is because they want to know kind of what direction they're going to go and what they can do, and rather than just come here with their first plan that they talk to you about and then have to come back with their second plan and then have to come back with their third. That's why they talk in advance.
I know.
So they can get an idea of, they can kind of serve. Then they come and if they do supply.
Sorry, Dale, let's let one person at a time, but we need to.
Yeah,
I don't
we-
think
we
it's,
can move on.
excuse
There's
me, I don't
nothing
think it's
to
fair
talk
that
about,
she's not
really.
allowed to talk about the project, but some people are. So we either talk about it or we
We're
don't.
not stopping anybody from talking
Yes,
about the
yes,
project.
you
No,
just-
we're
yes,
not.
you did, yes.
I stopped you from interrupting, that was all.
I think
So, I mean,
I
something.
understand, I'm not on the developer's side or your side, we don't have a project here
We
yet,
don't
but-
have a process
but
that's good either,
It's
and
just
that,
this, we keep getting this push like we're on the developer's side and we're gonna push something through. That's the kind of what we get from
I
everybody.
know, but
and
can
we're
I
not-
challenge you, please, as a planning board and a planner and a assistant
yes,
planner?
please.
Can you make a planning process
The-
that is as inclusive of the stakeholders as it is. And this is tough, right? Because that means we're gonna have to talk about something before it comes to you. But if you're representing the stakeholders only when it gets to you, that's way too late for the developers, is what I'm hearing you saying, and I get that it is.
So let me come back to this. So I think I said in a previous meeting, and I said this previous meeting, I believe your group, and I think you were present, that the process will start when the application is a complete application is filed and stamped in with the town clerk, and a public hearing notice will be created and it will be put in the newspaper general circulation, and every property owner within 300 feet of the abutting this property will be notified. And then the process starts, and there's a public hearing, and then the public hearing will be held under Chapter 40A of the Mass General Law. However, I will state that in most all communities, developers go out and engage a community and engage a neighborhood like this person has, and has tried to meet with the community prior to beginning the formal process. However, but that formal process will start. And all formal processes will start, just like we saw tonight prior to this meeting concerning 310 Pond Street. That is a formal public hearing process under Mass General Law. And it will start once the applicant has filed a complete application. And then everyone can get up and hear and talk and see the presentation, which will be made by the applicant and the applicant's attorney.
I know, and I know.
That is the process.
I know that is the process.
That's I've stated it before.
I know.
And I've been through I've worked for 3 different communities, and that's the same process that it is in the 3 communities I've worked in. And it's the same process for the 351 communities in the state of Massachusetts, and it's mechanically the same.
And it could be better.
How?
Well,
Okay, and that.
How? You know, how not, hey, we can change Mass General Law sitting here.
No, I know you can't. No, I know you can't. By creating a forum where someone who has a project, before they bring it to you as signed, sealed, stamped, and submitted, that there's a formal process to engage the stakeholders that's run by someone that isn't the developer and isn't the community. Because if it's run by someone else, then there will be if it's run by the planning board, say, or another group, whatever. If it was run by an outsider, then it would be, what are we looking at? What's the proposal? What do you think about it? What do you want to see? There would be an agenda that wouldn't be, look at this, why don't you want it in your neighborhood? Which is how those meetings turned out ultimately. Like, I'm bringing you this beautiful thing, you ingrates, which is not how that really, but it's how it can feel.
Isn't that, instead of doing that for every project, every potential project, every thought of a project that comes up, isn't that what the bylaws do, and this whole study of 126 and all those forums and discussions that led up to it, and the passing of it and the voting on it, discussing it, isn't that setting all those things in place? Isn't that what we already did?
Well, you would think so, right? Have you been to my neighborhood? Have you seen the addition at 23 Washington Street that isn't attached to the house and is 3 times the size of the house that it's attached to?
I don't like. I'm not. Yeah. But you know, so we have these bylaws, right? We have property owners, whether it's you as a property owner or this property owner you're talking about, or the property owners that we have property rights as individuals, as citizens, as a group of citizens. We make bylaws that try to put restrictions on those that put restrictions on our own property rights. Right, as a group, we restrict ourselves and each other.
Right.
And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we don't, and sometimes we try to change things that we obviously made a mistake on. But there is that process already, and so it's kind of just going through it. And when we talk about these things on 126, I'm studying the things that you're showing me, right? I know how to think about things in terms of design and in terms of planning. But it's also like not every project, not every site. I think when we talked about 126, it was like in general, the feel of the street should be like this. Not necessarily that every lot has a huge open space on it, right? Some lots will and some lots won't, and buildings, you know, might have a gap between them, between buildings and between sites, right? So we have to think about this thing, you know, as a whole. And when I think about the projects that you're looking at and the things that you're saying, I keep thinking, Bagel Table, Main Street, 3-story building, sat empty for a long time, isn't really that big of a commercial space. Huge gathering spot, community bonding spot, you know, so I'm trying to think, I don't remember, frankly, what the project looks like, what they presented last time, but I'm trying to think what's different. There's no open space, there's a little setback on the sidewalk, I don't know if that, you know, but there's no greenery out front, right? It's pretty bare bones, but it works really well. So I'm in my mind saying, what's different between the project, this one that actually works really well, 3 stories, limited, you know, so I'm trying to get to the, what exactly is it? And I don't think sometimes there is an answer, because design and communities there's a feel, you know, to it, you know, as well. So I'm not sure there is an answer to that question. But I think I think just listing all the criteria from 126 doesn't mean that what you're standing out, like what it is the same thing that what's standing out to me,
Right.
you know? So.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that, because it helped me think about why we're really here. The truth is that if the bylaws and the zoning were championed by the town employees and all of the boards that represent them and us, we wouldn't be here.
So what is not being championed?
So what's not being championed is having things shoehorned in spite of the zoning.
So they can do, no, I'm not gonna talk about the project, but.
So let's just say that our neighborhood has been burned.
By the bylaws.
No, by ignoring them. And so if I seem like I'm being kindergarten up here saying, this is what we expect, it's because, like, that's what we expect. And yeah, I know not everything is gonna have open space, but maybe the first project should. Or maybe there should be a plan in place to say where that's gonna happen, so that we don't think that we're just gonna continue to think we're talking about one thing and get something completely different. So we are here because we don't trust the process.
I think the process is, for better or for worse, more, I'm not talking about an individual project here now, I'm talking about the development of a street, of a city, of a town. It's more fluid and unknown, and I can't really plan it all in advance than all of us would like to think in planning a city. There's a little bit of chance involved. There's a little bit of taking a risk. Some things work, some things don't, because if it wasn't, that basically would mean that, we owned all these properties, and we are gonna build the things that are there so that can be exactly what we want, the collective we, I guess, but we don't. This property owner owns one, and that one owns one, and this one owns one, and that one owns one. We don't own them.
Okay.
So it is more, it's not in our
Let me add to
control.
that, but that actually makes up a city, right? Each of us, each resident in this room owns their own house, right? Each house is different, each color is different, you know, some may have a porch, some may not have a porch, but that's what adds character to a town. And so planning is not a cookie cutter. Planning is speaking of what Trish says, there's risk involved. You know, and there's risk involved in property and ownership and what you want to do with that property. You know, there's, you know, the Euclid zoning that every town has creates the zones, you know, and it's really wide swath. You have your industrial zone, your commercial zone, and your residential zone, but every part of town looks different. If you go to Framingham, a huge town, a budding town, there are many different sections of Framingham. There's a downtown, and everyone shares, is within that community, but planning takes different sections and different people and different architecture and brings it all together to make a community.
So in our community, we've got a very different east side of town and west side of town, a very different downtown corridor, right?
Yep.
Rail transit's gonna be different still. What we're trying to tell you from our perspective on the lower 126, we're not speaking for the rest of 126, is that we want something cute. And cute means in scale with, we live in cute houses that a lot of people in Ashland wouldn't want to live in, okay? It's a different scale in our neighborhood. Our lots are smaller, our things are smaller. We want something cuter than you might imagine. It might look great downtown, and we might go, holy cow. Because in our neighborhood, that's not how we live. So we're not asking you to change how we experience our neighborhood in a way that is so drastic as to make it unrecognizable to us. So I am telling you, as part of my community, that our part of town is, our little lower 126 is looking for something that is a scale different than you might be envisioning.
Do you feel that the current bylaws of the overlay district that you're in currently do not reflect, even if something is built exactly to the bylaws by right, that they will not reflect the values of your neighborhood?
I feel that the
By right, if
Yeah,
it's, everything is by
if
right.
everything's by right, I'm not even gonna argue with it, because it's by right. But this is a special permit, so it's different. And the visual impact does matter, and you get to vote on it. So I'm telling you that it's important to us, and that your interpretation might not match ours. And so I'm trying to tell you what ours is. And I'm happy that you said don't talk about a particular project, because then it would be about that. And really, it's about us. We are looking for something in our neighborhood. We do not want an empty place. We've lived with that before. We've lived with the empty A.J. Wrights. It's much better when it's filled. Does anybody even remember when it was A.J. Wrights? See? But it was, and then it left, and then it was empty for a very long time. And that's not good for anybody, okay? We don't want it empty, and we also don't want it to change the place we call home, all right?
I understand where you're coming from too, but it's like when they submit it, I understand what you're doing. You want us to know what you want. When they submit it, it may meet 99% when they finally submit it of what's allowed. So then
Yeah.
we deal with the other 1%. I mean.
But it might only meet 55%.
But we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah,
And so
so
I'm
we're just-
asking you to say, you know what? It doesn't meet this criteria. What are you going to do to put this in?
Well,
It doesn't meet that criteria. What are you gonna do to
That-
give to this neighborhood?
That should be after they submit it and we see what it is.
I
And
know.
there's gonna be plenty of public input on that.
But
But-
I want to say, what I'm finding valuable about this discussion tonight is both seeing the values presented from the group of residents from this neighborhood, as well as spending the time to go over the provisions in the bylaw. And I think on some of the other projects we've looked at, it would have served the planning board well to have sat down at the very start of the process and said, okay, what are the provisions of the bylaw? You know, what does it say the purpose is? What does it say the criteria are? And let's match those up with this and see how well it works. And we haven't done that typically with projects, and we should.
Mhm.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you. So our last review standard, aren't you happy? To promote flexibility in and variety of development to enhance the natural and aesthetic qualities of our district. So if you could come and try to find something to appreciate about our neighborhood, please do. If it's a stretch for you, we could tell you what we appreciate about our neighborhood, and then let's enhance those with a project that fits well, okay? We do have some concerns. I think we've actually covered most of them. So we are concerned about the independence of your decision. So we want to let you know that we want you to consider this project, as you said, when it's presented to you, that's the starting point. We are concerned about the potential mass of the potential building, and that it won't fit with the character of our neighborhood. We are equally concerned about traffic on our streets, because that's going to impact everybody every day that lives on Greenhalgh and Douglas, and everybody else that has to get out onto 126, which is all of us. And then we've invested town resources in this project already, and we don't want that to be considered as anything, right? That doesn't mean anything. What matters is what comes before you and the criteria against which you evaluate it. That's how we thought this all should work. It doesn't always work like that in Ashland, and we would like to see it work like that again. One other thing is I want to thank you for letting us engage you. There's this quote here about developers anticipating needs and talking with the stakeholders. We would like to see more of that, especially as we know we're going to develop along our corridor. We know it's going to get a little messy and we're going to have to figure some things out. But we also look forward to it because it's going to, I don't know, I mean, when we talk about vitality, we're looking forward to living in a vibrant place. Who wouldn't? But if we're not engaged in the process, then it might happen without us and we might not like it, and we might actually not support a lot of things that we never learned why we should even like them. So if we could be engaged more, that would help us. I'm going to turn this over to my friend Vilma and my neighbor Rose to just say a few more things. Thank you so much.
If I could just say, I thank you for your presentation, and I think it was, I agree very much with Preston's comments, that I do think it was a good reminder of what this overlay district is supposed to do and why it was created and the principles behind it, and I found it useful, so thank you.
Appreciate that.
Vilma Burnell from Rodman Road. There's a couple of things that I wanted to mention is the reason we have come here to you today is because we have been wanting, we know the other side has been talking to people in town government, and we felt like we were not, that everybody should hear both sides. Nothing has been presented to you. However, everybody involved, town boards, the builder, the neighbors, everybody knows what it's about, but nobody knows. So that's why we want to be heard as well, so you have both sides and you can decide. What we've asked since day one is not if we like that building or if we don't like it, if we like beige or if we like green. We are asking the town to follow the bylaws. That was number one since the beginning for the neighbors, regardless of what we like or we don't like. We have had 4 buildings, houses built in our neighborhood where the bylaws have not been followed at all within the last couple of years. So here we have this massive thing. Again, the best one is the addition. It's a joke. Please, I'm asking everyone to drive down Washington and look at that addition, which is still called an addition, which is 3 times bigger than the house it's added to, which is really not added to, because there is no connection to it. And these people are being allowed to continue building the addition. So that's why we're here. The other reason why we're here is because we have been encouraged by someone in town government to lobby. We have been told by someone in the town government to lobby just like everybody else does. And that's why we are here. But the third thing I want to say, which was funny to me when I think Janet mentioned about going down Mount Waite and seeing those buildings and who wants to shop here, I had to drive by Mount Waite today, and the thought in my head was like, this used to be the back way. Which other way am I going to find now? It's like, once those buildings have residents there, there's no way I'm going down that way anymore. They've lost, Dunkin' Donuts lost a customer. I mean, I go by a lot there, and they're not gonna see me there. So I don't know how bringing more residents to the area, it's going to make our businesses better and attract more people. That's all. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Good evening, Rose Flaherty, 18 Douglas Road. I know we all want to go home, so I'll be very brief. We've talked to many people, both in our neighborhoods and around Ashland, and currently we have a petition that's so far been signed by 115 people throughout the town, and it states, "We support high-quality projects that fit with the neighborhood and meet all Pond Street mixed-use overlay district zoning requirements. The proposals to date have not met reasonable standards. Because current proposals are not by right, we request town government to work with invested citizens equal to efforts supporting the developer." We understand that the planning board has not been working with the developer, but we are tremendously concerned about the efforts that have taken place to pave the way for this project when it requires careful consideration by the board to issue a special permit. I've lived in Ashland most of my life. I grew up on Douglas Road. I now own the same house. I have neighbors there that I've known my entire life. I have neighbors that are much newer. But all of us care about our neighborhood. We care about the people there. We care about what happens there. We look out for each other's homes, our kids, our pets, our everything. And over the years, many of the residents of our neighborhood have been actively involved in this process for many of the projects happening in the area. I have talked recently with most of the residents of Green Helge and Douglas. Every person that I spoke to readily signed this petition. They unanimously support a project that fits well with the neighborhood and benefits the neighborhood. Nobody is standing here saying we have to save Marconi's. We know there will be development there. We're happy to see development there. We don't want to see an empty lot, an empty building. We support something that will be a benefit to our neighborhood. Every single person strongly agrees, and I know we're not supposed to be talking about this project, strongly agrees.
I think we need to stick back to the bylaws. Bottom line.
We strongly urge the board to carefully consider the development criteria that was just laid out by the Pond Street mixed use overlay, and see that we need something that fits those criteria to be put in this place. That's it, and this is the petition.
Thank you.
Just real quick on a note on that, the bylaws, they're in here, if you notice, there are a lot of incentives to do things, so we have to consider that too. It's not just cut and dry. They put incentives in there to get developers to do certain things, and so we need to consider that too. I'm not saying one way or the other what's going on, but a lot of it's incentivized, and if we just reject all the incentives, then, all right, I'm done.
Thank you.
I
For
just
being
have a
done.
question, because Trish, you were implying that like the open space doesn't have to be evaluated under, I believe I'm correct. If you apply and you're applying for a project that is requesting to use the overlay, those are the criteria for that project.
I don't know. I guess I'll have to.
The criteria.
Yeah, I don't know if.
I mean, I get what you're saying, and that's awesome that you're thinking about holistically, because I think we've been terrible about that. You and I were pretty much on the same page running, so those are.
Yeah, the criteria that they be, trying to, these are the 8 criteria that the project will be trying to hit. The way I read it, and then you move over to the review standards, and really there's 3 review standards, not 5 review standards.
standards.
Well, no,
Number
just, they
7.
left the bullet points off
Number
those
7
two.
is
The
the
bullet
common
points
open
are not
land.
here, there's just,
Number
is that a typo in the bylaw?
It's either a typo in the bylaw or what they're calling 4 and 5 are part of 3.
Well, 4 and 5 are
Either
part
way.
of 3, but yeah, these are the
Number
new
7.
standards of the planning board.
Number 7, common open land.
I think
So-
those are the 8 elements that if you use the bylaw, that's what you'd be looking to use.
So,
to
so that's what I
implement
wanted
the
to
project.
clarify, because I think they're two separate things. Like, I think discussing the corridor and getting out ahead of that will be awesome, and I hope we continue to do that. But I had concerns saying like, oh, that's just sort of the corridor, and I don't have to look at that for a specific application if they're asking to use it, and that's not my understanding. I think
Well,
that's
it
fairly
says right
clear.
here, the developer is encouraged to have common open land.
But I
Doesn't
think it's
say
also
required.
required. Well, okay, then I guess that's
part of the
also,
incentive. See, we gotta look at that too.
Well,
That's part of the
so-
incentive. You can have more open land, then maybe.
so that's also why we're here then. We don't need to take a minimalistic, like, it doesn't really matter. I'm not sure I agree with that, but let's say, if we say everything doesn't matter, then what does my neighborhood get? What does Ashland get?
But
Like,
we don't say that. I mean, I don't know if you've watched us on other projects. We always encourage open spaces and all this stuff.
but
We're
to
not-
use
we're-
this overlay district,
We don't even
you
know
have
what they're
to.
gonna present, so.
Well, no, but it is, I think that we could live with a project that met those. I think we're trying to communicate that, and things that we have seen, without talking about a specific project, have not met them. And so that's where we're stuck. Like, we would
Well, we
love
gotta
to
see
be
the
part of
project.
it. We've asked to be part of it. We are very grateful that this is part of it, and this was really helpful, I think, to at least
Yeah.
try to see if we're on the same page. I'm not entirely convinced we are, but I think.
I need to interrupt here. It's after 10 o'clock. I am concerned that the outside doors might have automatically locked, and so I need to send someone down to make sure that the doors are unlocked.
So we have to wait to get a response, otherwise
So-
we'll have to redo that part of the meeting.
So, no.
We'll just take a tech break here.
No, we can,
Oh, you,
Oh, I'm sorry.
we can keep going.
Okay.
But-
Go ahead,
Mark?
Okay. Mark the zoning, feeling proud now. To the town planner, my step 1 was coming in to ask you to make copies of the zoning bylaws. And you willingly said you would, and you did. You gave me 200 pages.
What a nice guy I am.
Now,
I didn't even charge you for him either.
no,
I shoulda.
now, this lower 126 group,
Yeah.
what makes me feel proud is that I'm doing a town service. How did you explain, how did me and you talk in a brief moment that you were making them? And how did I explain myself, and how did you understand me to come forward?
I think you have to repeat the question again, Mark.
When I first came to you
When?
3 weeks ago,
3 weeks ago. Yes.
that I'm
Yeah,
not-
you brought the 282 page document that I printed out to you, which is the zoning bylaws, and you marked it up, and you said you would like to have a time to meet with me, and I said, please reach out to me via email, but we have not had a chance to sit down and talk. So I think I applaud you for preemptively trying to sit down and review the bylaws, but at this point, we have not had that opportunity.
No. Thank you. And now, I'm not withdrawing that opportunity that I would have. When I'm saying I'm being proud of the 126, it got brought out in the public.
Yeah, I
What
think
it is.
it's good to talk about the 126. I think we need to do this. I think it's good that we all kind of came together and reviewed the bylaw. I think it would be more important for all of us to go back and to read the Cecil report, which I believe is a very, I know Steve Cecil personally. I've worked with him on different projects. He's a very well-seasoned planner, architect, very well respected. And I think since, the town is very lucky to have had the Cecil Group come in and really do a review of the corridor. So I think on top of the bylaws that we reviewed today, I think we need to review the Cecil report, which was done only a few years ago.
Okay.
And I think that's the next step, I think, for the planning board, and I think that's the next step for the lower 126 group, to tell you the truth.
And to go on with that is that not just because the developer comes in and talks to you, but I also, on the town website, have looked at the 10-year-old Ashland Economical Report.
Okay.
And I talked to our economical, Beth Reynolds, and
Yeah.
town management, I've done all that.
Yeah?
This town needs to wake up and go forward, but not the way it has been. It's been sleeping too long, and now you got the group here that's bringing it out in the open. And provisions is the main thing to change.
Provisions of the bylaw.
Yes.
Well, I think it's probably on the town's to-do list, Mark, to tell you the truth.
And through the rest of the board, chairman, the rest of the board, developer comes in to impress you, to see this is what his or she product is going to be. Not expecting public feedback in the background.
I disagree. I think the developer is always going to expect public feedback, especially in a public forum in front of the planning board. In all projects, have public feedback.
Okay.
There's no project that walks through with no public feedback from either a planning board and or a neighborhood.
I could name a couple, but I'm not.
Let's not.
Mark.
Yep, Mark. We're not going to go there.
It's getting late. If this is not about the,
What you got on the agenda? 2 agendas
yeah,
down.
we got more items, and if this is not about the 126,
okay, it
stuff,
will be.
let's
It
move
will
on.
be.
Make it quick.
It will
It's
be,
late.
because I want a person up here behind me to get to speak. I'm behind them, and I want to see the road become two-way, compromise, and inform formally together.
Thank you.
very much. Hi, I'm Carol Gran. I live on 30 Lakeside Drive, which is part of the whole neighborhood. I just want you to understand that we're passionate about our neighbor, our whole neighborhood. We love where we live. It's a neighborhood like when I grew up, my kids grew up there. We're gonna keep coming back to you. We're not gonna just go away from the time this whole 126 project starts for every single thing, because we care a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. And we want you to come back to us.
I think it's important to understand that the planning board cares as well. We're also residents, we also care about our community. And it's hard when you start to hear things that were happening behind closed doors or secret meetings, or when we're all kind of like, what am I being accused of, when those things come up. So it really should be a very collaborative process at all times, and sometimes it feels like we're being accused of something that didn't exist. So please be careful of that as well.
And we're here to
Don't
enforce the
again.
bylaws, right?
I want to say you're not being accused. These meetings have happened.
Not with us.
Well, I'm not saying with you. I'm not saying with you. I'm saying that within town government, they have happened. So we're not accusing anything. We're saying facts. And the one who has told us that happened is certain builder and his lawyer. So that's how we know that these conversations happen.
Okay.
We're not accusing anyone.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
I think we had a good experience tonight, and I thank you everyone for coming. But I think the planning board, I think we need to move on with the agenda items. as
Okay.
planned.
Our next agenda item is discussion of possible zoning changes, including setting a minimum commercial percentage on mixed-use projects. I asked for this to be put on because this is our last meeting before the selectmen have a deadline for the fall town meeting zoning. And I know we've got our other zoning article that we want to do about the use table for self-storage and industrial use. And So we're we're definitely going forward with that article.
So what I can look at, so I pulled out section 4, the dimensional requirements regarding the CH district, which is commercial highway, and it says on the maximum height, and I'm at page 16 of the bylaws. It is so CH in the area in that whole district. We would not be changing anything if it falls within an overlay district, but a simple change. Right now, the maximum height is 3 stories, 35 feet for dwellings, 5 for otherwise, and so it's 5 stories for otherwise. And so I think the easy fix would be to remove the 5 and place a 3, or just say 3 stories, 35 feet. A very simple. I think how I look to you to say how big, what do you want this to be?
We did something similar to this downtown, right?
Yeah, wasn't it?
And what was that? We just did something similar a couple last year or something.
I'm sorry. It is the ADD, the Ashland Downtown District.
We limited it to 40 feet or 40 something. The possibility of going higher if they.
45 minutes, round to roof.
We had to do that. We did that to match the town hall kind of.
Go for it. Go ahead, Joe.
So I think I've got my notes from the meeting we had back in many months ago at this point in terms of changing some potential uses in some specific zones. So I have that here. Do we want to just go back? I mean, this should and could be very quick discussion.
Okay.
And we have to do it tonight, correct?
Yeah.
Well, no, what we have to do is, my understanding, what we have to do is tell the selectmen, we want to do a zoning article. We don't necessarily have to give them the text yet.
Okay.
We tell them we want a zoning article to do this, we want a zoning article to do this, and we want a zoning article to do this.
Okay, so you're just
And
trying
then-
to decide what
Yes.
how many of these
Yes.
zoning
And,
articles.
and we
Okay.
have the,
So,
and
gotcha.
if we find out we're really not ready, we can always pull them.
Got it, okay, okay. So I will be quiet then and.
So, but
not
I think we're
into
set,
the
we do
conversation.
wanna do the one changing the use table.
Yep.
I think we're all agreed on that.
Yes.
And you're saying,
The way I took that was you want to change the height table. Or the
No,
dimensional
no.
table.
No, this is the use,
commercial.
There is
storage.
allowable mini storage and.
That's the only thing we want to, okay, yes.
There,
For that one.
there were several uses we wanted to change
Okay.
from yes to no in commercial highway. That's the
some
use table, not the
specific-
It's the
dimensional
use
requirement.
table, I got you, now I understand.
So this is one that we discussed and agreed, we had a working session and we agreed to some discrete things here.
Got you.
I think the height conversation is something that I think there is interest in having
Okay.
and discussing and maybe putting something on, but I think
Yeah.
that's just greener, if you will, in terms of like where our heads are at.
Okay, got you,
Right? Is that
got you.
fair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a height restriction and a possible variation of setback. Instead of always being 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet on a commercial property, that there may be something that varies in that, that might require more in certain circumstances.
Okay.
So do you want me to talk
Yes.
about these specific ones? Okay,
Yes,
so in the
please.
use table, there's mini storage, if you locate that use.
And it's listed under industrial uses.
Sorry, I don't have the page number.
But
Yep.
So under mini storage, we want to change CH from yes to no.
Industrial uses from CH.
No, mini storage.
Mini stores right here, I got you.
CH
I got you.
from yes to no.
Yep.
We would like to change CV from planning board
Yep.
to no. We would like to change CN from planning board to no. The other use we discussed and agreed on was the construction yard or landscaping business.
Yep.
Right.
We would like to change CH from yes to no. We would like to change CV from planning board to no. We would like to change CN from planning board to no.
Gotcha.
That's correct.
Okay.
No, it's under the.
And the genesis, just for purposes of this meeting, and because this meeting was many months ago, you know, the genesis of these proposed changes really was specifically some of the development that's happened on the 135 corridor, and looking at these particular uses and the large amount of community feedback that we've heard on this particular use.
These are not the kind of economic development commercial uses we want in our highway district. We want them in industrial districts.
Perfect. Okay.
So, yeah, that's the discussion we had. So we're definitely going forward with that article.
Okay. I thought I informed that I was looking at the height tonight.
Yeah.
That came.
That's
well,
fine.
the 5 feet came. The 5 stories came out to me.
I think we should talk about that.
I think we should talk about it because my question is, I don't even know if the fire department has a ladder truck that goes up 5 stories.
Really?
Do they?
I'm pretty sure they do.
They do. Okay.
That's
But-
why it's 5 stories. That's as high as they can go.
Okay.
But I mean, I think if we look at, we'll use a project as an example. I mean, 81 West Union and this phase 2, which is being proposed, and as we've gotten a very close look at some of the scale of some of those buildings, like, I think it's, you know, rings very apparent in our minds that
44 feet's pretty high.
44 feet seems fairly high in some of these areas.
I think it should be personally I think it should be a special permit for anything over 3 stories.
3 stories, 35 feet?
And make it a special permit on its own.
I mean,
Now, what's considered a story, because those are just one building with a mezzanine.
Well, 3
That's why you
stories
need to
or 45
specify
feet.
So you have
height
to
also.
specify the height.
35 feet.
3
Yeah,
stories
you
or
have to
35
specify
feet.
the feet, because the stories can get dicey.
Yeah.
3 stories up to 35 feet.
Yeah.
I think that's more for maybe. I think that needs a little bit more discussion and studying for probably a general town meeting. But I think we can.
Because didn't we talk? We've had conversation about the stories not defined. Is a story defined in our bylaws or zoning?
There's a definition.
We changed the downtown one and we made it.
I remember a long little conversation.
Let's just look at that use table. Maybe we can.
Let's look at the use
Or
table.
the dimensional table, where it says.
I mean, I definitely, I like the direction you're going, Peter. I think it's just a function of, you know, because my question is, where are we saying that, or where are we proposing that change? And I want to look at that on the map and think about that, but.
Because a lot of times in the way you measure buildings from the ground up can get a little.
Yeah, opinionated.
It depends
when
on.
the ground's not level.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take average median grade. You go to all 4 points of the building. You take the the average median grade. You average them out. And then you go up from there.
We
To the
can
ridge
talk about
line
peak
of
of
the
the roof,
building.
ridge line. Yeah.
And to tell you, and then I've had experiences in Cohasset where the height of the building. So the height of the building actually is not measured at the ridge line, the ridge line of the roof. It's actually an average between the ridge line and the gutter line. Has
So
to be
somewhere in the
35
middle
feet.
between, yeah.
And that actually went back historically to the size of ladders that fire departments used to carry on the engines, because it used to be 35 feet. So when you put up the 35-foot ladder, you knew that the top of the ladder fully extended
midway on the roof.
could hit the bottom sill of the top window on that peak, within that roof. And so
Knowledge.
it depends. It really goes upon how you define height and where you measure
Yeah.
from. And
That's
so
from
you
when,
can
1723?
1723.
I don't know.
It's good. You can get into the weeds very quickly concerning height.
Well, we should probably research that one a little bit more.
Okay. I think we need to research that, but the
And we
use
might
table.
even have to look at the one we just did.
The use table, we're definitely going ahead.
Okay, so I can work with Emma and I will work with that, with what you described, Joe, and I can work with town council to put that forward. And I think
Can we put the height on and take it off if we're not ready?
Let's do that.
let me next week try to start drafting something up, and I'll talk to town council. Town council's a wealth of information. She's great. So I can talk to her about it, and then I can dig into the bylaws a little bit concerning the definitions, because I think that's where we have to kind of build the basis off of, is what are the current definitions for height for the buildings.
Yeah, cause when we changed the downtown, I don't remember going through all that, where the slope is and all any of that stuff.
You're talking, I know, you're not getting, it depends. We're talking about grade, like median average grade?
I don't remember any of that conversation.
Well, maybe we have to define how you measure height.
Yeah, that would probably be a good
Conversation
idea.
on stories and height was never
Yeah.
with grade, it just was, you know, well, what's a story, how high is that, is it
Well,
defined, and,
is it defined?
what if I build a 40-foot one room, what gigantic room with no floors in it, is that a story, you know, and some of that, so.
Gotcha.
Talk about the sidewalks,
thank you.
sidewalk length.
I think you had, in addition to the height.
Right,
you
I had
had
one other thing that I specifically had put on the agenda because it was my idea and I wanted to bring it up, was setting a minimum commercial percentage on mixed-use projects. That you can't call it mixed use when you've only got 1% commercial.
Yeah.
You know, what, and I was thinking some of our mixed use is by right, and saying that it's got to be 20% commercial to be mixed use by right. Was, you know, I'm thinking 80-20. It means if it's a 5-story building, that you got one full floor. If it's less than that, well, maybe you can encroach a little on the commercial, but not as much as you did on 21 and 128 Main.
Right, yeah. I mean, I support that discussion, I support having a spot for that, and I think it's nuanced, because I think you're balancing, trying to be attractive to, you know, have developers wanna be able to economically develop something viably, cause I know that commercial is challenging.
Commercial is the most challenging thing, so.
But I do think we, on 128 Main, you know, we struggled with that battle, and we will struggle with that battle on future mixed use in the very near term. So, I'm with you in that regard.
And I think having something in the zoning, even in cases where it's already a special permit, if we have something elsewhere that says our target is 20%, that gives us some more of a basis of saying what's good and what's not for a mixed use project. So the only question is how to go about putting that into the zoning, because I haven't gone back and looked at the zoning bylaw to where that would fit in. But if we want to put that in as a placeholder for fall town meeting, we could.
I think so.
Okay.
Cause there was always, every project, there's been a question about how much commercial and how much residential. It's always been an issue on almost every
Maybe I think you
project.
just put it, maybe it goes, I'll talk to the town council, but I think it could start with putting the definition for mixed use in.
It has to be this ratio.
Yeah.
to
A
be mixed
definition
use.
for a building with mixed use that's considered mixed use
Is
under
certain
all under the bylaws would be 20%.
Yeah.
A 20% ratio or a 1-to-5 ratio of.
Commercial to.
If we
Commercial
put it in definition, but my thought is I'd like to have some way of making it so that if there are certain things that make it more in the interest of the town.
I see.
That's why I was thinking, if it's not 20% and it's by right, well, then it changes to special permit.
Okay. I think mixed use is thrown around this bylaw a lot.
Yeah, so I don't know.
And I think you really have to go back.
It's gonna take some time digging
It's
through
gonna
the
take
bylaw to
some-
figure out where that would fit in.
I think to get that right, I think it may take some time. Cause I think to do something of that nature, you wanna make sure you get it right in the first place.
Yeah.
And so, especially if you're going, well, not in the first place, but if you've identified this issue that has occurred over time with this mixed use conversation, I think to go back and to try to fix it needs to take time. Because if you're doing it just quickly, I think it could be a tough sell.
Yeah, I think getting that in for fall town meeting is probably a rush.
I think could be a rush. But I think the conversation has to start to then go through and say, okay, it fits in here, 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 and here. And do we want to add a caveat to give the planning board the ability to adjust that, upon per application. Because I've been in many discussions even prior to arriving here, my employment within Ashland is how do you, the retail is the loser in the mixed use market. Cause the residential housing market is so hot right now, that's what floats the project. But at the end of the day, the project has to be financed by the developer and a bank, right? To see change, to see things happen, right? And so if a developer cannot finance a project, it's not gonna happen. So it's a real fine
Yeah,
line.
it's balance.
It's a big balance that you're getting into. It's a big balancing act that you have to hit, and you have to hit it correct. It's almost like threading the needle. You have to make sure it's the right percentile. So if you put it too high, that you're not
Killing projects.
You're not stymieing any
Your economic
projects.
development in
But
the
if you
town.
put it too low, you're not protecting the mixed use,
You're not getting what you want.
the mix in the mixed use district. Because then you're getting you're getting the principal use project coming in under as the mixed use.
And right now, with all,
You gotta find that middle.
right now with all the shift to online sales, retail is way down.
Yeah, and so
So-
I even say, maybe it's a conversation. I think it's a real deep conversation we have to get into, but it's maybe you have to put in 12 to 17%. 15 to 20. Maybe you give them a window, because you have to realize each project's not the same, right? Each parcel's not the same. Each project's not the same. Each unit count's not going to be the same. Each square footage for a commercial space is not going to be the same. So if you put in a hard number, right? It may make one project economical, and then make a smaller project, right? Which would be kind of like a mixed use 1, 2, 3 units
Unless if we did something where we have a minimum
and a maximum
incentives for more.
for more.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to, how are you gonna, it's gotta be between here and here, then they gotta come in, we gotta figure that out.
Yeah.
So it's really not,
And
if
that's
there's a
good.
minimum maybe, then that's good because they have to meet that to be a mixed use. But it's gotta be low enough to where it's like the most projects can fit into that.
Yes.
Okay, so
And then if we had incentives like we do with other stuff, that if you add more commercial space, maybe you give them another unit of apartment for every whatever space. or
Every
something like
5%.
that, yeah. So, I mean, something like that.
All right. I think I'm
Yeah.
gonna.
okay, so
I'm
we've
gonna
got
move forward with
2 articles.
2 articles.
Okay.
Number 1 is gonna be the use change. Number 2,
Building height.
building height. And then we'll leave off the mixed use for maybe a regular annual town meeting.
Yeah.
And
The big one, the big one that we've talked about that we're certainly not ready for this one is the 126 discussion, right? Which is rezoning and dealing with 126 in advance of that investment. And that's a big lead time. That's a huge project, right, in and of itself.
the roadway.
Yeah, the
Oh yeah, I think
126
the
corridor,
roadway, and but more importantly, I think the downtown. Before I got here, Sheila secured a grant to look at the zoning in the downtown. And I think if you're gonna even talk about the 126, corridor, I think
Downtown's closer than 126 in time in terms of delivery, right?
yeah. And then the other thing is we all have to go back and I think from tonight we have to look at that Cecil report to say, okay, what does the Cecil report say? That was done, what, 2-3 years ago?
Sounds all right.
Yeah.
Which is, to tell you the truth, in the planning world, that was yesterday.
Yeah.
It wasn't, that's not
Not aged out.
Yeah.
that's not aged out.
Yeah.
That's still a very relevant document.
And then, I know this comes up every time we do this, but maybe we start a little earlier on some of the bylaws rather than the last meeting we have before. We got a head start on this because we talked about it, but
Yeah.
if we can put that into some of our regular meetings, little things to start.
Yeah, well, I think
way early in the thing.
Well, I think
so-
it's important that I think, is to spread out the public I think we're gonna get a lot of public hearing if projects start to roll in.
Yeah.
I think we need to make sure that we're gonna do two of them on a planning board meeting and not bog the planning board down time-wise with 3 to 4 public hearings in a night. Because tonight we had 2 public hearings
Yeah.
and it took a long time.
It's 11:30.
And it's 10:30 right now. And, you know, and Emma and I have been here since 8 o'clock, 8:30, you know.
You're just
It's a
getting
long day for
started.
us,
Yeah.
but you guys also have very long days and you have families and jobs and, you know, I know Joe commutes into Boston and but I wanna make sure we give enough time to each project
Yeah, exactly.
and not rush everything.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, well, let's rush some
Next.
things.
okay.
Yes.
I wanna get through some minutes.
Let's read the minutes.
Because, the June 27th, was not an official meeting, because we didn't have quorum.
I was
And-
fine with those minutes, Preston.
Okay,
Or with those notes, rather.
let's,
Because they're not minutes, right?
They're not
Right.
minutes, it's
Yeah.
notes.
It's notes.
Informational.
so, I don't know how we wanna do this, since they're not official minutes of a meeting, it's more just.
I would ask you guys, the present members to review them. There needs to be no motion. However, if you review them, we can post them online.
I reviewed them.
Could we have a motion to, release the notes from June 27th, 2019? Would that be appropriate?
I think that's
So
I think
moved.
that's a very,
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 4-0. So, if any,
Next page.
July 25th.
It's going way back.
I had no edits to July 25th.
I didn't either.
Are we ready on July 25th then?
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 25th as printed?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I read them.
Any
They're good.
opposed? That passes 4-0. August
Just making sure
22nd.
they didn't change them since.
I'm not gonna double check.
One of these days we'll get Joe to read them at home. And then
I read some of it.
get you something that'll like speak them to you while you're driving.
That's a good idea.
You know what I mean? Like a text-to-speech program. You can listen to them on the way home.
Hey, you're messing with my reading right now. Can you be quiet, please?
It's gonna take even longer.
pumped up for this. Old.
Did you,
I read them.
did you ever, Peter?
Yes.
Did you ever go check out the 81 Union Street dust situation and all that, or?
I did. I went by there today and it rained this morning.
Murphy's Law.
I also want to note that the solar array has begun
Saw
construction.
that. You can smell the cut trees today.
Yeah. You can, they backed, I'm gonna say they backed in off of Wagunko through the, what's that place called? Nyakol
Mm-hmm.
entrance to the cap.
Was that a change of plans?
Yes.
They were originally gonna go from the from the
From the
MBTA road?
MBTA road.
That's great.
which is a great thing they did.
Yeah, because there's no disruption. I drove
There's
through
no,
there
yeah, there's
last
no
2 days.
there's no
nothing.
disruption on the
Yeah.
MBTA road. Yeah, so I was really happy about that. Yeah, so they backed in.
Nicely done.
Yeah, which was nice.
Well, they were gonna do both originally.
Yeah.
They were gonna do both. There is going to be an access easement off the access
Yeah.
gate. They're still going to,
Make
They
an
didn't do
entrance
their
there.
insertion there with
but
all
they
the
didn't
equipment.
do the
yeah.
insertion with the equipment, and it looks like they're dragging out all the wood from the
The other
Niagara
way.
Falls
Yeah, it's all
entrances
stacked and.
through Magunko, which is actually awesome.
Yeah.
hmm
Yep.
Yeah.
Was that your conversations with them?
I talked to him about it.
Yeah.
I talked to him about going through that way,
Yeah.
but I can't say that I was the
Mhm.
final
Influencer.
influencer.
You maybe a little bit.
I may have talked to him.
Nudged him in that direction.
I may have whispered in their ear,
Hmm.
but no, they've been actually really good to work with, I would say, and I think it's gonna be a good project.
Any comments or corrections on August 22nd?
I have something on page 2. Row 63, 64. So I would append to the end of that, line 64. So site usage will generate less traffic, comma, than the original intended use as residential condos. I just remember making the point that, we were gonna build 120 condos on this site and that, these bays is less traffic, it's way less traffic and less impact, so.
Than the original intended use.
Yeah.
Than the original, maybe not
Plan.
intended, than the originally planned use,
Proposed.
which was residential condominiums,
Uh,
or just residential units.
I don't remember it being proposed for residential units.
Well, okay, so that's why
Offices.
his comment in the meeting was, when we first were looking at what we were gonna submit for the site, we were thinking condominiums. So he made the point that, going this way with these contractor bays, which is what we've submitted, that's what they submitted as a plan, is a lower impact than what they had originally, planned. We don't need to hang up on it, it's fine, I just think it's a more complete, it's what they said, and.
Their original proposal, this is
But
less
his
impact than
point
their
is the
original.
planning board, they never received a proposal for
Yeah.
condos, right, so you're concerned about that.
If it's gonna say it will generate less traffic
And potential other uses?
than potential other uses.
Sure, then potential other uses,
Okay.
that's fine.
Any other changes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes of August 22nd as amended?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 4-0. Other than member reports, and anything about future meetings, that's it for tonight.
I'll make a motion that we close this. I always go slow because someone.
I would just say the next meeting is gonna be on September 26th.
Butts in.
So the schedule that I have, just a heads up, are, that's actually on the schedule that I inherited from previous planners before me, only runs, I believe, through October. And so I think at the next meeting, let's look at the calendar, because November and December get very interesting, especially on Thursdays, concerning Thanksgiving.
We will not have a meeting on Thanksgiving?
No.
Which is the fourth Thursday and Thursday. I mean, in November, and then Christmas,
No.
and then
We
the
should
New
have a
Year's.
meeting on Christmas Day.
No.
And so
Oh, why not?
typically the planning board in this town is always on Thursday. Can anybody explain to me why it's always Thursday?
Because
Farm
other
council
boards and
guy.
committees have other nights,
Back in
Okay.
1720.
and
You love my definition. You like the definition of 35 feet, huh?
and the members have
only
all
get a
gotten
ladder
used
up
to
to the
keeping
meeting
Thursday
room.
nights
Okay.
open, so other nights
I don't
get
mind
crowded.
Thursday as long as it's the second and the fourth Thursday in the month.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep to that. I'll keep to that routine. But if we do the second and fourth Thursday, obviously we're only gonna have one meeting in.
That's typical.
Is that typical in November? And then
Sometimes even if it's not on a Thursday, we don't, because people go on vacation.
people
and
go on
stuff.
vacation, and then we'll probably only have one meeting in December. because we're gonna be rolling into shopping season, Christmas week,
Yep.
X, Y, and Z.
As long as we can get away with it, that's great.
Yep.
Okay. I think we may have some late meetings, but we'll see what happens. If we had to schedule a meeting on a different night than a Thursday, if the board is in a pinch, or we do have a lot of items that are coming through, is Monday a night that would be possible?
I have to see which Monday. I think you have to play that by ear because
Okay.
everything changes, so people have different things. So if it
Okay.
comes up, propose it, and then
Okay.
we'll pick a Monday or two or something like that at
Okay,
the
so
time.
give
I
everyone
could
a
make
heads up.
Mondays work.
Okay.
No problem.
Conservation meetings got that.
Yes, they do.
We can meet in the basement.
We can meet in the basement.
Or
We
if
can
need to
meet,
If we need to meet, we'll figure it out.
we can always meet at a different room or different location.
Does Conservation Commission meet here?
Yes. Conservation here meets here, Board of Selectmen meets here, School Committee meets in here.
Does it have to be recorded?
No.
No.
But it can be recorded in the basement.
We-
It can be.
We like to have our meetings recorded. There is no legal requirement
Yeah.
that they be.
As long as minutes are posted.
um,
Mhm. This is,
Though we have been televised since the late 1800s.
since Stone's opened, right? Okay. With the-
Why there are TVs there, so they can watch the planning board
I
meetings.
know. I hope they were watching tonight. All right, I'm
That it?
done. Yeah.
I
All
make a
right.
motion that we end this meeting at 10:42 PM.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion is 4-0. Thank you and good night.